Chapter 1307. The arrow that carried the power of sanction shot towards them. From the destruction it caused to the environment, one could tell that its power was terrifying. Here came the question. Why didn't the tattooed man rush over with such an excellent opportunity? Instead, he stood at a distance and showed his surprise? The reason was simple. He was afraid of death. That was right. The reincarnator who once dared to seek death had developed a fear of death after being personally trained by Arya. Hence, when the opportunity presented itself, he hesitated and wavered. An abnormal person had finally become normal. It was worthy of celebration. Back to the other question, why didn't Jun Changshao dodge? Of course, it was not that he could not act cool if he dodged, but he had experienced the power of sanction on the battlefield. In comparison, the energy gathered by the arrow was too weak. To be honest, Go Sheng had a wealth of clinical experience in resisting the Realm Hall's punishments and sanctions. He could even be called a top expert in the field. If he used the Realm Hall's martial arts to attack, he might feel guilty. Facing the power of sanction, he was fearless. Come on, baby. Let's see if this arrow is as strong as the dimensional battlefield's sanction. It was definitely far inferior. After all, the power of sanction previously came from the golden armored man and was at full strength. Although the power gathered in the arrow came from the upper realm, it was nothing more than a weapon, not a real sanction. Whoosh whoosh. The layers of defensive enchantment erected in front of him suddenly erupted with a stronger aura, as the owner's fighting spirit rose. Boom! As if the arrow from beyond the sky came into contact with the flowing light enchantment, the power of sanction suddenly spread and shook the entire city. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The buildings collapsed and turned into powder. Dust covered the sky. How is this possible? The tattooed man, who was the only one who could see the situation with his own eyes, widened his eyes. The defensive enchantment set up by the guy caught the arrow that contained the power of sanction, causing it to freeze in midair. The fortress master was also dumbfounded. This was the first time he used the supreme sanction bow. But when he took it from the previous owner, he heard him say that as long as he pulled the bowstring and formed an arrow of sanction, the targeted person would be destroyed in body and soul, regardless of their level. But now, not to mention hurting people, the enchantment did not even break. If he was not sure that the item was personally handed over by the previous owner, the fortress master would suspect that this was a fake? Hoo-hoo. At this moment, a strong gust of wind blew away the sand and dust, revealing the arrows and the solid defensive air wall. The power of sanctions gathered in the arrows seemed to be drawn and crazily poured into the inside of the enchantment. This is a good thing, Jun Changshao said to himself. He did not summon the heaven origin soul-suppressing pagoda, but he could still control and absorb the power of the sanctions. Arya also began to get busy, transforming the incoming energy into a human form. Plop! After a short while, the power of sanctions within the arrow of sanctions was completely absorbed, and then it dimly fell to the ground until it completely disappeared. How is this possible? The fortress master's voice trembled. Not only was the power that had gathered from the upper realm not destroyed, but it seemed to have been absorbed by that guy. This was truly inconceivable, the tattooed man said. As expected of a traitor. At first, he thought that Jun Changshao was just bragging. Now that he dared to openly go against the sanctioning power that represented the sanctity of the world, it meant that he did not agree with the Jia Hall at all. What exactly was a traitor? It was not a possessor of any special ability, but from his words, actions and heart, he rejected the Jia Hall. To put it simply, he did not agree with the authority of the upper realm, and could even do anything that went against the rules set by them. This is a friend, the tattooed man thought to himself. I'm definitely going to make friends with him. Jun Changshao stood in front of the defensive enchantment and said lightly, the power of the upper realm that you gathered is too weak. It barely reached 30% of the power of the previous double lightning tribulation. He almost forgot that there were 2 lightning tribulations when facing the sanctions of the upper realm. Not only did he take it, but he also protected Queen Rose. Of course, this was also due to the enhancement of the universal talisman. Now that he was stronger, Although the arrow of sanctions came from the supreme bow of sanctions and looked powerful, it could not break through his defense. Damn it! The fortress master pulled the bowstring again, and once again gathered an arrow of 7-colored flowing light, and shot it out along with the thunder and lightning. Boom! 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 All the martial artists outside the universe heard it from far away. Not only could they hear the movement, but they could also see with their naked eyes the occasional thunder and lightning descending from the fortress. They were all guessing what it was. If one arrow could not kill the target, there would definitely be a few more arrows. However, the reality was cruel, because the fortress master had gathered more than 10 arrows of sanctions in a row and bombarded the defensive enchantment that Jun Changshao set up in front of him. Although there were obvious signs of shaking, it did not collapse in the end. Huff huff! Huff huff! The power of sanctions was absorbed into the divine origin soul-suppressing pagoda. An area whipped it into a human form. They were neatly lined up and squatted down with their hands on their heads. They were as pitiful as the 12 patrol agents. Boom! Boom! The fortress master bombarded a few more times, and realized that it could not do anything to the defensive enchantment of the other party. Only then did he reluctantly stop and put away the supreme bow of sanctions. I like this thing so. Jun Changshao dispersed the enchantment around him and said lightly, "It's going to be mine soon." Swish! At this moment, the fortress master appeared like a shadow, and violent energy surged wildly. If the weapon given by the upper realm did not work, then he could only rely on himself. Toppling the mountains and overturning the seas. Boundless sea. All kinds of awesome moves were used, and the violent aftershocks tore the space apart. Jun Changshao was not to be outdone. He raised his fists and fought with him, and all kinds of moves were used one after another. Divine dragon swings its tail. Fierce tiger descends the mountain. Golden rooster stands on one leg. Monkey steals the peach. Although the names of the moves were a bit lame, the scene of two experts choosing to fight hand-to-hand was really quite powerful. Even their movements contained the aura of the heavenly Tao. Beep! Beep! The bombs placed in the main hall were still decreasing by the second. There were only 10 minutes left before the explosion. Brother! Jun Changshao and the fortress master punched each other and shouted, "Take the prisoners and leave. I have already placed the warship at the city gate." Okay. The tattooed man kicked the middle-level void-piercing realm warrior out, and then went to the most intense area of the chaotic battle. He gathered his energy in his dantian and shouted, "Follow me." The prisoners who were fighting with the soldiers saw that the other party was wearing the clothes of the main culprit. They hurriedly retreated while fighting and successfully flew into the ancient warship through the broken city gate. Swish! 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 When all the prisoners entered, layers of defensive barriers appeared and sealed the entire warship. Then, the warship turned around and flew out rapidly. Big brother, why are there so many barriers? Why do I feel like I just escaped from a pack of wolves and entered a tiger's den? Don't think too much. This must be a defensive system to prevent the universe's power from suppressing us. Just as the prisoners were discussing, the ancient warship had already traveled a long distance, and then slowly came to a stop. Beep! Beep! The strange sound was still ringing, and the rhythm was obviously faster than before. The fortress master was still fighting with Jun Changshao. He gradually realized that something was wrong, and transmitted a message to the soldiers in the city. Leave the fortress quickly. Shwa! Shwa! In a short period of time, the space warship exclusive to the fortress carried a large number of soldiers, and flew out from various hidden exits. It could be said that there were not many people left in the space fortress. Moreover, after enduring the battle between Jun Changshao and the fortress master, the 4 big cities had already been turned into ruins. Boom! Boom! The battle continued, and the intensity was still increasing. Beep! 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 Time passed second by second. When there were only 59 seconds left, Jun Changshao took the opportunity to escape from his opponent's entanglement and flew out like a meteor. "You can't escape." The fortress master shouted and formed a seal with both hands. Then, one after another, materialized barriers fell from the sky, instantly sealing off all the city gates. Boom! Jun Changshao punched the barrier but didn't break it. Hence he cursed, "Fuck." The bomb was activated and was about to explode. If he was trapped inside and died along with the fortress master, and that fellow, it would really be a masterpiece. Kid. The fortress master's eyes were about to split open. You let go of the hell prisoners and destroyed my space fortress. You must die here today. Jun Changshao ignored him and began to frantically recall the Chimen Duanjia breaking array chapter, hoping that he could break this barrier. However, a few seconds was a little too late. Damn it. If I had known earlier, I would have slipped away first. The reason why he waited for 1 minute was because he was worried that the other party would have enough time to remove the bomb or throw it into space. Hence, he could only stall for time to ensure that the plan was carried out smoothly. However, he didn't expect that there would be such a strong barrier hindering him. This was the final defense of the space fortress. Once it was activated, it would seal off all the exits. Others couldn't enter or leave. Wait a minute. Where was the fortress master? At this moment, he was already outside of the fortress. Jun Changshao was trapped inside and couldn't get out. However, as the fortress master, he was naturally familiar with the defense system and knew how to escape. Hence, the current situation was, Go Sheng had successfully placed the bomb in the space fortress. There were only a few seconds left before the bomb would explode. However, everyone had left, and he was trapped inside. Tragedy, the system said helplessly. What a tragedy. Jun Changshao didn't have time to care about it. He was fully focused on breaking the barrier, because every second was extremely precious. Beep, beep, beep. The bomb was still counting down. When it reached 10 seconds, the frequency suddenly increased. Ah! Jun Changshao roared angrily, his veins popping out. It wasn't easy to place the soul bomb and blow up the space fortress. In the end, he would have to be buried along with it. Just thinking about it made him break down. Beep. 10987 210 9080 7. When it stopped at 0. 1. Jun Changshao finally succeeded in breaking the final defense. However, he didn't have much time left. The readers silently took out their wreaths and joss paper. They calculated that if Go Sheng left today, how long would it be before the 7th? Should they give it to Bo Jin? How much would be appropriate? Jun Changshao's expression was ferocious. He rushed out of the fortress like a mad dog. At that moment his blood muscles, and even his soul seemed to be burning fiercely. The speed was indescribable. Disciple still has to wait for my return. I can't die. Sister still has to wait for me to love her. I can't die. The system still has to wait for me to scold her. I can't die. There were 10,000 unrealistic reasons in his heart that stimulated Jun Changshao, making him burn all the energy he could. But when 1 minute passed, a deafening sound accompanied by a light as bright as day suddenly appeared behind him. Only he roared powerlessly. I really want to live for another 100 years. Boom. Chapter 1308. The soul bomb finally exploded. At that moment, the blinding white light made everyone unable to open their eyes. The strong explosive force and impact directly swept away all the warships in the distance. My eyes. My ears. One by one, the martial artist's eyes were in pain because of the piercing light. One by one, the martial artist's eardrums trembled because of the explosion. Gradually, after everything had adapted and recovered, everyone suppressed the shock in their hearts and looked over. They found that after the light gradually weakened, the starry sky fortress was gone, leaving only the feeling of an incomparably shattered space. Hiss! In an instant, all the martial artists sucked in a breath of cold air. They could not see the entire big explosion with their naked eyes, but from the entire universe's starry sky to the point where it was unbearable to see, it was enough to show that the power was extremely terrifying. If they had been slightly closer, they would have probably been turned into dust. That guy will definitely die. This kind of power that can blow up the universe's starry sky into pieces, not to mention mortal martial artists. I'm afraid even people from the upper realm might not be able to withstand it. No wonder the beeping sound made everyone afraid. All the martial artists secretly rejoiced that they had escaped from the fortress in advance. Otherwise, their ending would definitely be, wait. In the area where the airwaves gradually dissipated, a figure actually appeared. Everyone gradually opened their mouths. This was because after seeing it clearly, the guy in the black robe stood in the same place, his whole body shining with golden light, his black hair dancing in the wind. The space in the area was actually intact. He's actually still alive. All the martial artists were dumbfounded. They were extremely far away. Seeing the light of the explosion and hearing the sound of the explosion almost made them vomit blood. There was a person in the explosion area who was actually safe and sound. This was really, wait a little longer. There was another person in front of that guy. Yes, not only Jun Changxiao, but also the tattooed man. He stood in front of Go Sheng, the muscles on his back ruptured, blood flowing, and the expression on his face was unusually ferocious. Jun Changxiao was stunned. Just as he was about to use all kinds of trump cards to withstand the damage, the tattooed man suddenly rushed over. Not only did he use his body to block in front of him, he also blocked the barrier completely, which was why he and the surrounding space were safe and sound. It was absolutely unexpected that someone would block the bullet. Moreover, the person who blocked the bullet was not a disciple or a relative, but a guy he had just met. Jun Changxiao suddenly remembered that the other party had a spiritual seed that could reincarnate endlessly. Only then did he realize, you want to die and become stronger? Wow! The tattooed man spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was deathly pale as he smiled miserably and said, I saved you. Because you saved me. Actually, Jun Changxiao fell silent. He wanted to say, even if you don't come over to block the bullet, I can still live. It's just a waste of my trump card. However, he felt that it was too hurtful, so he didn't continue. It's not just hurtful, it's heartbreaking. The system said. Wow. The tattooed man spat out another mouthful of blood and said weakly, Bro, from now on, from today onwards we are friends. Brother. Jun Changxiao hugged him and shook him crazily. His expression was one of extreme pain. Don't shake. Let me finish. The tattooed man said as he spat out blood. If one day you go to the upper realm, you must come. Find me. My name is Gu. I forgot. Fuck. After the last word fuck, his eyelids rolled up and his hands fell limp. He was completely cold. The traitor from the upper realm had failed to commit suicide multiple times. Today, he finally got what he wanted. Cause of death soul bomb. The tattooed man died a great death. Because he helped Go Sheng block a fatal blow and saved him all kinds of trump cards. Brother. Jun Changxiao hugged the tattooed man and raised his head to let out an angry roar. Then he used a green onion to wipe his eyes until tears streamed down his face, and he was in so much pain that he wanted to die. Buzz! The corpse suddenly burst into flames. The tattooed man left peacefully. The fire was also very strong. Like ashes, they drifted into the universe until they completely disappeared. Brother! Jun Changxiao clenched his fists and swore, I will go to the upper realm to find you. The position of elder of the sect of all times will always be reserved for you. No matter the reason, he had blocked a bullet for him. He was his life and death brother. Ka. The bracelet and anklet shook slightly. These were the belongings left behind by the tattooed man. Jun Changxiao tidied them up and threw them into the space ring. He said secretly, Brother, when we meet in the upper realm, I will personally handcuff you again. The system was speechless. What the hell is this? Swoosh. Jun Changxiao turned his anger into strength and turned around. His eyes locked on the fortress master in the distance and he shouted angrily, I want you dead. It was not easy to find a talent, but because of him, he was killed by a soul bomb. Although he could be reincarnated, who knew how big the upper realm was, and whether they would meet again in the future? What a coincidence. The fortress master was also unusually angry. After all, the fortress that had been painstakingly built by generations of predecessors was completely destroyed today. If this could be tolerated, what else could be tolerated? Brat. The fortress master raised his hand, and a pair of scimitar-like weapons appeared. He said angrily, "You must die today." Hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo. Streaks of blade chi that tore through space shot out. Bang bang bang. Jun Changshao took out his Sky Tyrant spear and broke all the incoming blade chi. Then he rushed forward with killing intent. Xiao, xiao, xiao. At this moment, a warship flew over from afar. There were many experts with strong auras standing on it. The lowest cultivation was at the lower void-piercing realm, and there were even a few middle void-piercing realms. People from the soaring dragon continent. People from the Qingling continent. These planes are all related to the Starry Sky Fortress. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Suddenly, on the gradually approaching warship, the experts from various planes flew over and hovered in front of the fortress master. There were actually hundreds of them. When all the prisoners of hell escaped, the fortress master asked for help from the nearby continent. To be able to rush over in an hour, it could be seen that the level of these people's warships was not low. However, when they arrived at the scene, they found that the space was the most severely damaged area. They were shocked. Where's the Starry Sky Fortress? Why is it gone? Everyone, the fortress master said angrily. Not only did this thief release the prisoners of hell, he even blew up the Starry Sky Fortress. The experts from various planes were stunned. Wasn't the Starry Sky Fortress indestructible? How could it be blown up? Right. When they came, they heard a huge explosion. Could it be related to the explosion of the Starry Sky Fortress? I'm sorry. Suddenly, a person walked out from the cockpit of the warship that had just arrived and said loudly, "Fortress Master, our continent will not participate in the grudges between your Starry Sky Fortress and others. This time, we are only here to watch the show." The fortress master's face immediately darkened. "I fucking called you over, but you actually didn't participate in the show." City Master Mo, at this moment, Jun Changshao grinned and said, "I didn't expect to meet you here. The mortal universe is indeed very small." That's right. The middle-aged man who suddenly changed his direction from providing assistance to watching the show was Mo Shangxing from the Nine Heavens continent. Just now, he was standing at the side of the Starry Sky Fortress. After all, there were business dealings between this plane and this place. However, when he saw the familiar back and face, he immediately became an outsider. Why? The fortress master couldn't be offended. The patriarch of the sect of all times couldn't be offended either. If he had to choose between the two, City Master Mo would definitely choose Jun Changshao, because the scene of him resisting the two lightning tribulations on the battlefield was still vivid in his mind. Jun Patriarch. Mo Shangxing cupped his hands and said, "It's been a long time." Jun Patriarch. The few lower void-piercing realm experts from the Nine Heavens continent were stunned. Then they turned around and returned to the warship. Shua. Jun Changshao raised the sky-splitting spear and said, "Those who dare to help the Starry Sky Fortress are my enemies. Think carefully." Brat. A continent expert sneered and said, "Do you know that blowing up the Starry Sky Fortress is challenging the authority of the higher realm?" Mo Shangxing was silent. It wasn't the first time that Jun Patriarch had challenged the authority of the higher realm. "I've been roaming the mortal universe for thousands of years, and I've never met such a daring person. Doing something that the heavens can't tolerate, we must kill him." These few continents were stronger than the Nine Heavens continent. They weren't designated to enter the battlefield, so they knew nothing about what was happening inside. At this moment, they were definitely on the side of the Starry Sky Fortress. All right. Jun Changshao kept the sky-splitting spear, and his hands hung down naturally. Ho-ho, ho-ho. At this moment, dense lines appeared on the breastplate. A dazzling golden light appeared, and gradually formed a mighty soul with a furry face and a thunderous mouth. Special effect, Return of the Great Saint. Ho-ho, ho-ho. The cape behind him fluttered in the wind, and an unruly and powerful aura instantly filled the entire universe. Shua. The great sage raised his head and opened his eyes. He gently raised his right hand, and hot lava appeared out of thin air and condensed into the shape of a rod. The moment he grabbed it, the surface cracked, revealing the complete Rui Jingu Bang. The Monkey King's appearance this time was obviously different from the last time. Great Sage, Jun Changshao said, I'll leave them to you. The Great Sage glanced at the fortress master, then glanced at the reinforcements from the other planes. He said impatiently, how weak are you to summon me when you're just a bunch of lackeys? Chapter 1309. Although the Great Sage's soul was not a mythical figure in the true sense, the way he appeared was really hot, and his tone was really arrogant. Unlike the soul formed by the green dragon crescent blade, the Great Sage had independent thoughts, and was very dissatisfied with Jun Changshao summoning him again. In his words, why did he always use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken? Jun Changshao was very embarrassed. A fortress master whose strength was unknown had so many middle and lower void-piercing realm cultivators. Yet they were all described as minions. Just how strong was Brother Monkey? Could it be that he surpassed the upper void-piercing realm? If that was the case, when he went to the upper realm one day, with this trump card in hand, he should be able to survive. Monkey King, Jun Changshao said seriously, please deal with them and let the Great Sage equaling heaven shine in this universe. He could use other trump cards, but the Great Sage's special effect was the safest because there were no side effects and he did not have to do it himself. In this day and age, if you fought personally, you would be embarrassed to say that you were the main character. Okay. The Great Sage raised the Rui Jingu Bang rather lazily. The fortress master and the other masters looked very serious, because from the appearance of this maggot-like soul, they could feel that the opponent's strength was extraordinary. What should they do? Was it too late to retreat now? Many masters from different planes regretted that they had come to participate in this matter. After all, to be able to blow up a fortress in space, he must be very powerful. When absolute power appeared, people would become smarter, and their intelligence would also regain the high ground. Retreat. It was definitely too late, because the Great Sage flew over, raised the Rui Jingu Bang and smashed it down. There was no wind, no waves, only a binding force that made it difficult for people to move. The masters from different planes were unable to move, and the pressure was so strong that they almost stopped breathing. Whoosh! The Rui Jingu Bang grew infinitely, and the area it covered expanded rapidly. The pupils of the masters from different planes who were shrouded shrank, and their expressions gradually turned from ferocious to fearful. No! Just as the cry of despair sounded, the enlarged Rui Jingu Bang had already smashed down. The whole process was smooth, and it even gave people the feeling that it was understated. But the final result was a middle void-piercing realm cultivator, and two lower void-piercing realm cultivators falling down like cannonballs. Boom! 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 The three of them crashed heavily into a crater far below them. Their heads were swollen, and they had already passed out while foaming at the mouth. Instant kill. 3 seconds. When the experts from the other existential planes saw this, they all sucked in a breath of cold air, and the shock in their eyes became even more intense. The corners of the mouth of the experts from the Nine Heavens continent twitched slightly, as they rejoiced inwardly. Fortunately, they had learned about Jun Changxiao's deeds from City Lord Mo, and chose to be an onlooker. Otherwise, they would have ended up in a miserable state. Go! At this moment the fortress master shouted coldly. Although the macaque that had suddenly appeared was strong, they had an absolute advantage in numbers. As long as they gathered their strength, they might be able to defeat him. It was a good idea, but the reality was cruel. Before the elites of the various dimensions could react, the great saint had once again raised his staff and swept it over. Because he had always been gigantic, his area of effect was extremely wide. Boom! 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 One by one, the void-piercing realm powerhouses either greeted with their chests, abdomens, or their faces, unlocking a whole new posture and flying magnificently. Pung pung pung. They were like cannonballs crashing into the meteorites in all directions. Due to the different aspects of the impact, some of them had hideous expressions and were in extreme pain, while others directly fainted from the pain. The martial artists who had escaped from the fortress earlier were all dumbfounded. To be able to float safely in the universe meant that the experts from the various dimensions who had come to help were all at the void-piercing realm. In the end, they were no match for the great saint at all. Whoosh! At this moment, the great saint took a step forward and rushed into the crowd, as if he was stepping on a rainbow cloud. His Rui Jingu Bang instantly shone brightly as he began his large-scale attack. Jun Changshao took out a loudspeaker and added a manual background music for the great saint. I've just captured a few demons. Subdued a few more demons. Why are there so many demons and monsters? Pooh. Pooh. He had only sung a few lines when the martial artists in the distance could no longer suppress the boiling blood in their bodies. They all covered their ears and blocked their hearing, despair appearing on their faces. The fortress master and the others were already facing terrifying opponents. When Gosheng opened his mouth again, their minds were instantly disturbed, and they were sent flying one after another. The great saint could no longer hold it in. After sending a few targets flying, he said with a hideous expression, "Shut up. Kill your soul." Jun Changshao, who was singing loudly, hurriedly stopped and said with an aggrieved expression, "Brother Monkey, I'm cheering for you." The great saint roared, "You're asking for my life." From these few words, it could be seen how talented Jun Changshao was in singing, and how destructive it was. Boom! Boom! The great saint adjusted his mentality and continued to attack. Although he could kill them instantly, there were many void-piercing realm cultivators, and they were evenly distributed, so it would take some time to deal with them all. Retreat, retreat, retreat. The continents that came to help were all terrified and fled as fast as they could. However, as long as they were targeted by the Jingu Bang, they would end up falling like cannonballs. Very powerful. Jun Changshao's blood boiled as he watched. In fact, with his current strength, even without the uncertain factor of the fortress master, he could still kill everyone. But it was difficult to be as straightforward as Brother Monkey. There was no need to describe the battle process, because as long as the great saint's Rui Jingu Bang locked onto a target, no matter how the other party fled, it would be difficult to escape the law of using all parts of the body to block it. The fortress master had a lot of connections. Within an hour, he contacted dozens of planes and found hundreds of void-piercing realm cultivators to help. Unfortunately, in front of the great saint, they were nothing more than a group of minions. Boom! The Rui Jingu Bang smashed over again, and a mid-level void-piercing realm cultivator flew out, unable to withstand it. Then from head to waist, his body was sunk into the crater in the distance. As for him, he had already entered the play dead mode. As a result, only the fortress master was left in the battle area. Shwa! The red cape fluttered, and the great saint raised the Rui Jingu Bang horizontally, proudly suspended in mid-air, exuding an aura that made people worship him. From the appearance to the battle process, any photo taken could be used as a wallpaper. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "Is having more people powerful?" The fortress master's gaze turned gloomy. He didn't expect this guy to summon a Makat-like soul and directly deal with the hundreds of void-piercing realm helpers he had invited. The plain cultivators watching the battle from afar also didn't expect the situation to develop to this point. Mo Shangsheng was very calm. This was because this scene of one against many was far from Jun Changshao fighting 100,000 battlefield ghosts alone on the battlefield. This scene referred to the effect, rendering an aura. The main reason was that the great saint was too strong, and when he fought with overwhelming strength, he would often be sent flying with a single blow. "Come," Jun Changshao said. "Let's settle this today." The fortress in the starry sky had exploded, and the helpers had been dealt with. As long as the Monkey King could deal with this guy, he could be at ease and boldly study the array, and then ascend to the higher realm with his sect. The fortress master felt a little guilty. Kid. At this moment, the Jingu Bang in the great saint's hand gradually disappeared, and a weak look appeared on his face. He said, "Summoning me twice in a short period of time has consumed too much energy. I'll leave the last one to you." Ha! Jun Changshao was a little confused. Xiao! Xiao! Suddenly, the great saint gradually turned illusory, and then disintegrated, turning into wisps of golden light that merged into the great saint's set. "It can't be." Jun Changshao's expression completely collapsed. "I invited you out, And now you're leaving without dealing with the most important opponent? Seeing the maggot-like soul suddenly disappear, the fortress master, who was originally quite apprehensive, suddenly regained his confidence. He said coldly, "Then let's settle this." Chapter 13:10. The great sage activated by the special effect was very strong, but not invincible because there was an absolute time limit. Thinking about it, it had only been a few months since Jun Changshao entered the 9th level of hell, returned to the falling star continent, and then returned. Summoning him twice was indeed a little too frequent. To put it simply, the first summoning, Monkey King, was full of energy and super strong. The second summoning was still in the same state, but the energy used last time was not replenished, so he could only force himself to go on stage. Actually, in the chaotic battle just now, Monkey King specifically picked the weak ones from the various existential planes, and did not target the fortress master. Why? Because the fortress master was a little strong, and his current state did not allow him to fight. Monkey King was also very smart. When he encountered a tough opponent, he would use his aura to intimidate him, then deal with a group of small fries and escape. Not only did he successfully protect the title of Great Sage, Heaven's Equal, but he also intimidated the existential plane's martial artists. Of course, please do not doubt the Great Sage's strength. Blame it on Go Sheng for changing cards too frequently, which was too much for the fortress master. If he was given enough time to rest, the next time he appeared, he would definitely hold 2 watermelon knives and slash from the southern Heavenly Gate to the eastern Punglai Road. That was not the main point. The main point was that once the great sage left, Jun Changshao was put on stage. Fuck, Go Sheng roared in his mind. If I knew I couldn't deal with him, I would have used my other trump cards. The purpose of using the great sage special effect was to deal with the fortress master, without him doing anything, then save his energy to go on a trip to the various existential planes. Now he only managed to deal with the reinforcements, and he still had to fight personally. If he had known, he would have used the unstoppable blade, and saved the special effect. Jun Changshao was annoyed. I wasted a trump card for nothing. Whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a powerful airwave came from afar, accompanied by 2 blade lights. Bang! Bang! Jun Changshao took out the sky-dominating spear to dissolve the blade energy, but he was also sent flying. Fuck. How did that guy become stronger? The system said. After all, he was in his territory just now, so he did not dare to recklessly destroy the buildings. Now that his home is destroyed, he will definitely not have any more scruples. That was right. The fortress master no longer had any scruples. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to kill the bastard who blew up the starry sky fortress, and appease the spirits of his ancestors in heaven. Die! Hoo-hoo! 2 extraordinary scimitars were swung out, condensing a blade light that was even stronger than before. The fortress master was thoroughly enraged and went all out. The strength he displayed was obviously stronger than before, and it made Jun Changshao deeply realize that the opponent was the strongest enemy he had ever faced in his life. No matter what, it was still the last boss of the mundane world. Boom! Boom! Jun Changshao waved his sky-dominating spear. His spiritual energy seemed to have turned into 2 roaring dragons that charged forward and perished together with the saber aura. Shwa! Ding! Shwa! Ding ding ding! The fortress master exerted his control over space to the extreme. He frequently teleported and attacked. The spectating martial artists could not catch him at all. They could only see the light flashing in the universe, and the space being torn apart. Jun Changshao was not weak either. He wore the great sage set, and held the sky-dominating spear in his hand. He countered every move that came his way, and the solemn look in his eyes became more intense. Heavenly illusion, sacred change. Hoo-hoo. Hoo-hoo-hoo. At this moment, the fortress master used his profound martial arts again. Violent airwaves roared in the battle area. 8 huge dharma forms were formed in 8 different positions. Then, they raised their right palms and pressed down on Jun Changshao in unison. Ka-ka-ka-ka. 8 palms came with a heavy aura. The universe, whose structure was stronger than a plane, suddenly could not withstand it, and began to collapse on a large scale. The scene was so shocking that it made all the martial artists gasp. Swish! Jun Changshao made a prompt decision and turned into a stream of light that shot into the sky. Boom! However, just as he broke out of the encirclement, two palms pressed down first, one from the right and one from the left, squeezing him in the middle. Boom! Boom! The other 6 palms pressed down one after another and stacked on top of the previous palms, causing frequent explosions and strong energy ripples. The collapse of the space also became more visible. Mo Shangxing's eyes widened. The few short exchanges between the fortress master and Jun Changshao were much stronger than when the soul fought against many. It was definitely an earth-shattering battle in the mortal world. Fortunately, they are fighting in the universe. If it were a continent, the destruction caused by the 8 palms alone would be enough to annihilate all living things and disintegrate the plane. Rumor has it that the fortress master's strength has reached the upper level of the void-piercing realm. Now it seems that it is true. Why would such a strong person stay in the mortal world and not ascend to the upper realm? While everyone was discussing, the palms stacked together gradually disappeared. Jun Changshao appeared in the field of vision with disheveled hair. His eyes flashed with strong fighting spirit, and the sky-dominating spear in his hand emitted a dazzling light. The fortress master's face turned ugly. He had used his trump card again, and this guy was still safe and sound. Whoosh whoosh! Jun Changshao, who was floating in the broken starry sky, raised his head and smiled. Scorching flames surged out, and the surrounding temperature rose sharply. This is the spirit of the fire soul. The fortress master had heard about it from Zijia. Now that he saw the attribute born in the mortal universe, he was still greatly shocked. He knew better than anyone that a martial artist with a spirit seed, as long as there were no accidents, breaking through the void and ascending to the upper realm was a sure thing. Under the envelopment of the flames, Jun Changxiao's entire body could be said to be extremely powerful. The Sky Tyrant spear in his hand was also beginning to be enveloped by a pitch-black attribute. Evil spirit! The fortress master's mouth twitched. Having one spirit seed was already amazing, but this guy actually had 2. He was simply going to ascend to the sky and stand shoulder to shoulder with the sun. What is that? Fire and demon attributes? It should be stronger and more profound. At this point, the strong person who spoke was stunned, and then exclaimed, "It can't be the spirit seed of the mortal universe." What? Everyone opened their mouths in shock. Whoosh whoosh. At this moment Jun Changshao, who had fully activated the 2 attributes, burst out. Because of the flames surrounding his body, he was like a huge fireball that smashed fiercely. Boom! When he was close to the fortress master, the scorching flames suddenly exploded, and the ink-black sky-dominating spear pierced through the void with a sky full of sparks. Ka. Under the explosion of the flames and the evil force, the space was ruthlessly cut open. Ding! The fortress master stacked the 2 sabers together and caught the spearhead with the flat of the saber. Jun Changshao pulled out the spear and launched the most terrifying attack with the flames and evil force. Boom! 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 In an instant, the 2 flickered and collided in the vast starry sky of the universe. All kinds of powerful spiritual energy wantonly filled the air, and the space was shattered. Especially the high cost of the burning made people want to cry, but have no tears. Boom! Boom! As the battle became more and more intense, the surrounding meteorites crumbled and turned into nothingness. The experts lying on the distant meteorites felt that the aftershocks of the battle were getting stronger and stronger. So they stood up one after another and fled faster than rabbits. This bunch of bastards. The fortress master was extremely annoyed. They're all playing dead. Red sky raging flame slash. Suddenly, Jun Changshao swung the sky-dominating spear fiercely from the sky, and immediately formed a huge slash seal formed by the power of the fire soul. Before that, his realm had instantly skyrocketed, and the power of the moves he used had also increased rapidly. Whoosh whoosh, the monstrous battle seal pressed down rapidly. World of 10,000 laws. The fortress master angrily spread out his hands, as if he had grabbed the void, and suddenly pulled in front of him. The solidified barrier immediately gathered in front of him. Boom! A deafening explosion suddenly sounded, and monstrous flames spewed out, shocking the martial artists in the distance. They had never seen a battle of this level in their lives. Whoosh whoosh! The scorching flames gradually dissipated, and the defensive barrier in front of the fortress master had shattered. He looked abnormally embarrassed, and his breathing became rapid. Whoosh! Jun Changshao, who was standing in the sky, raised the sky-dominating spear and said lightly, "It's over." Buzz! Buzz! The shattered universe suddenly trembled slightly, and gradually, 7 different colors of special attributes appeared, and then surged from all directions and gathered on the tip of the spear, forming a 7-colored vortex. A strong sense of danger rose in the fortress master's heart. Not good. Retreat quickly. Whoosh! The fortress master did not hesitate at all. After smelling the danger, he quickly fled in a certain direction. Jun Changshao did not chase after him, and only pointed the tip of the spear, which was continuously gathering energy, at the direction where the fortress master disappeared, and said lightly, "I'll give you 3 seconds to run. If you survive, consider yourself lucky." 1, 2, 3. He did not act shamelessly, and did not speed up. He shouted at the most normal speed, and then coldly shouted, 7 mysterious sunglow break. Whoosh! The 7-colored energy beam gathered at the tip of the spear suddenly shot out, and in the distance, it seemed to have penetrated thousands of miles in an instant. Pucci, the fortress master, who had escaped far enough, suddenly stopped in place, and his eyes gradually widened. Then, he looked down with difficulty, and found that his chest had been penetrated by the 7-colored light beam. When his mind was about to disappear, he was not thinking that he was about to die, but thinking about what that guy had shouted just now. That's right. He had shouted 7 mysterious sunglow break. That's right. It was the profound remnant scroll that he had obtained for a long time, and he had never been able to pry into it. Because of this thing, he had been seriously injured, and he had never been able to reach his peak state. My remnant scroll. The fortress master turned his head with great difficulty and said, So it was you who stole it." As soon as he finished speaking, his mind and soul completely dissipated, and he fell into the starry universe upside down. Whoosh! Jun Changshao raised his hand, gathered a ball of flame and threw it. Boom! Finally, under the eyes of all the martial artists, the fortress master, who represented the absolute authority of the fortress master, was completely blown into powder, and then floated into the endless depths of the universe. Phew! After completely obliterating the fortress master, and eliminating the possibility of him being resurrected in the future, Jun Changshao heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and shouted at the escaping fortress master. To be able to meet in the universe is a great fate. In the future, Jun will definitely pay a visit to each of you. Jun Patriarch. City Lord Mo transmitted his voice. I have already made a list of all the continents that came to help the fortress master this time. It also has detailed their addresses, and the starry sky regions they are in. Really a godly assist. Chapter 13:11. The mortal universe was very big and gathered countless planes. Therefore there were many strong people. For example, there were hundreds of void-piercing realm cultivators who came to support, and there were even middle-level ones. Why didn't they ascend? They were worried about failure or not being mentally prepared. Breaking through the void and ascending to the higher realm was not a small matter. They needed to think carefully before taking that step. If they succeeded, they would go to heaven. If they failed, they would go to hell. Therefore, only by reaching the upper level of the void-piercing realm would they have greater chances and confidence. The fortress master had reached this level, and could be said to be the strongest existence in the mortal universe. However, because he had to manage the 9 levels of hell created by the higher realm, he had not decided when to ascend. Now, there was no chance, because he had completely turned into nothingness along with the starry sky fortress. The fortress master lost unjustly, because he had not recovered to his peak cultivation, and had been fighting with injuries. It did not mean that he could defeat Jun Changshao after recovering from his injuries. This was because that guy had secretly crushed the universal talisman and forcibly raised his realm by one level. More importantly, he had used the 7 mystic glow to break through. The martial arts created by the 7 mystic sage was displayed in its complete form, for the first time in the mortal world. The power that erupted was extremely terrifying. Even after the battle, the places where the light beam passed were still in a state of collapse. There was no sign of self-recovery. The fortress master is dead? Oh my God! Everyone gradually came back to their senses, especially when they saw the deep traces left by the 7-colored light beam. The shock in their hearts was even more intense. Everyone. Jun Changshao stood in the universe and said in a loud voice, "From now on, there will be no more starry sky fortresses in the mortal universe. If you want to continue selling all kinds of treasures, you can go to the falling star continent." Everyone's mouth twitched. This guy wanted to replace the starry sky fortress with his own continent. Of course, Jun Changshao said, "Anyone who comes to my starry sky continent to do business will naturally have various preferential policies. I will not let you suffer losses." The destruction of the starry sky fortress had indeed made him want to replace it. After all, turning the plane into a trade center would also bring huge benefits to the local martial artists. However, it was just a thought. If he really took this step in the future, he would need to seriously discuss and plan. City Lord Mo, after Jun Changshao received the list, he cupped his hands and said, "Thank you. If I have time in the future, I will definitely go to your continent to thank you." "You're welcome." Mo Shangshan cupped his fists and said without losing the demeanor of a city lord. Not only did this guy have good eyesight, but he had also understood Go Sheng's character through their interactions, so he had long since noted down the people who owed him debts. "Goodbye. Goodbye." Watching Jun Changshao fly into the ancient warship, Mo Shangshan thought to himself, "I was right, Jun Patriarch is definitely not a fish in a pond." First, they went head-on against the higher realm on the battlefield. Now they destroyed the Starry Sky Fortress. None of these were things that ordinary people would dare to do. The Starry Sky Fortress is gone, and all the prisoners have escaped. If they continue to do evil, it will be troublesome. An expert who had escaped from the city said worriedly. Yes, some people expressed their agreement. Although the warriors of the various planes did not like the Starry Sky Fortress attitude of "I am the ruler of the mortal world, and they have to listen to the rules," they still had absolute power and could intimidate many planes. Now that it had been destroyed, the balance would definitely be destroyed. Back then, the 2 top continents often invaded other planes. Later on, the Starry Sky Fortress came out to punish them. Now that the Starry Sky Fortress is gone, they will definitely take the opportunity to stir up trouble. Sigh. Someone shook his head and said, "The destruction of the Starry Sky Fortress is the beginning of new trouble." The worries of the powerhouses of the various planes were not without reason. One had to know that not all the powerhouses and continents approved of the Starry Sky Fortress and its owner. It was only because the other party was too strong that they did not dare to act rashly. Now that the existence of the balance was destroyed, they would definitely have no scruples. This situation was hard to predict, but there was another thing that would definitely not happen. That was, the escaped prisoners would stir up trouble, because they were on their private flight, and were on their way to the new prison. "Ha ha ha, the Starry Sky Fortress is gone. Ha ha ha, we are free, we are free." The prisoners happily boarded the ancient warship, and flew to the falling star continent. When they entered the Sect of all times, they took off their old clothes and changed into new ones. They sighed and said, "Jun Patriarch is really a good person." "Wait a minute. These clothes," one of the prisoners said in shock. "Jun Patriarch, didn't you give us the prison uniform? It's just that the style is different from the Starry Sky Fortress." Creak. The door to the Tianyuan prison pagoda suddenly opened. Jun Changshao turned around and opened his hands. The screen instantly turned into KTV mode and sang loudly, "The prison welcomes you. The world is open for you. The charm in the darkness is full of vitality." Puffed, puffed. The prisoners all spat out blood. Creak. The door closed again. At this point, Tens of thousands of prisoners were instantly transferred from the Starry Sky Fortress to the Sect of All Times. Although they still could not leave the prison, in terms of environment and comfort, the Tianyuan Prison Pagoda was obviously more humane. The empty prison became lively with the arrival of the prisoners from the Starry Sky Fortress. Of course, it was not chaotic at all because Jun Changshao was not only locked up in the corresponding level according to his strength, but also specially arranged mini-prison guards. They were the 12 patrol envoys. Knowing that the Starry Sky Fortress was destroyed, Z Envoy and the others were not willing at first. It was not until Area took out all kinds of tools to train them, and Yunhe was the first to compromise that they chose to give in, and became the prison guards of the pagoda, taking orders from the warden and the deputy warden. 12 mid-level void-piercing realm elites with superpowers as prison guards in the pagoda. It was definitely beyond the imagination of outsiders. The prisoners who were quite unhappy at first became obedient when they saw that the ones watching over them were the patrol envoys of the Starry Sky Fortress. They even spoke humbly. It could be said that, at this moment, the Tianyuan Prison Pagoda was very complete, and in terms of overall strength, it was obviously stronger than the 9 levels of hell. Everyone. In the monitoring room, Jun Changshao threw a batch of clothes on the table and said seriously, "Please wear these clothes that were tailor-made for you and continue to carry out the justice in your heart." Z Envoy and the others frowned. They were afraid of Area's training, so they were forced to compromise. In fact, they were very resistant to Jun Changshao in their hearts. After all, he destroyed the Starry Sky Fortress and killed the fortress master. Of course, Gosheng said, "You may not agree with me. It's okay. I will use my actions in the future to prove that there is justice in the depths of my heart." He's starting to bluff. The system complained. Jun Patriarch. Envoy Chen walked to the table, grabbed the clothes, and said seriously, "I believe in you. Fuck. Why did this guy compromise again? He said that he was very strong. And he said that he was elusive." Sigh. Zizi sighed and took out his clothes. People in prison had no choice but to take one step at a time. Swish. Swish. Boss and Old Five took the lead, and the others also changed into new clothes. In terms of appearance, it was no different from what they used to wear, except that the word chivalry was engraved on the wide cloak. When they put on the clothes given by Jun Changshao, the 12 patrolmen became a thing of the past, and they were officially renamed the 12 Wardens of Tianyuan Prison Pagoda. With the cooperation of Yunhe, the 12 Wardens temporarily accepted the Tianyuan soul-suppressing pagoda. However, it would take time and opportunity for them to truly accept it. Of course, Jun Changshao could use domineering means to force them to join the Sect of All Times, so they would not have to worry about betrayal. However, they were people who insisted on justice, so it was not appropriate to use underhanded means. Bah, the system said. You used a sneak attack to capture people, and you still have the face to say that. Times have changed, Jun Changshao said. What do you know? After the prison matters were settled, he began to focus on studying the fortune-seizing array. The Starry Sky Fortress was gone. As long as he could set up this array, he could bring the disciples to the upper realm and complete the main mission. The large number of prisoners in Tianyuan Prison Pagoda was a good thing for the disciples of the Sect of All Times, because they could enter at will and challenge the prisoners at the corresponding level, thus earning enough martial arts experience. In this regard, Yi Xingchen was the most enthusiastic, and he was the first to enter the prison a few days later. He entered the first level of the prison and started a brand new martial arts experience. Ka-ka-ka, ka-ka-ka. One by one, the prisoners walked out with bracelets in their hands, their eyes burning with passion. According to the rules set by Jun Changshao, if any sect disciples entered the prison, they could attack without worry. If they defeated them, they would receive the corresponding merit points, which could be exchanged for various rewards after reaching a certain number. For example, a day of freedom card. For example, a day trip to the sect. A relatively more expensive reward was 4 dishes, and a soup personally prepared by the Sect of All Times Master Chef Lu Wanshi. Damn, who are you looking down on? Or are we so used to being locked up in prison that we are so hungry that we can't be choosy? Kid. A prisoner clenched his fist and laughed sinisterly. Do you plan to fight all of us alone? Or do you want us to fight you alone? Cut the crap. Yi Xingchen said proudly. Come at me together. Go. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The prisoners at the scene unleashed their cultivation and attacked from all directions. Although there were low-level martial kings in Wu Huang, there were also half-sages in Wu Sheng, and there were quite a few of them. Therefore, after a fierce battle, Yi Xingchen was carried out of the prison by Zhao Daodu with a swollen face. On the way, he said with a broken face, Senior Brother Yi, the patriarch said that these prisoners from the fortress are not weak. How dare you fight all of them alone? Cut the crap. Anyo said weakly, secretly send me back to my residence. Don't let our fellow disciples see this. Chapter 13:12. Don't underestimate the Tianyuan prison pagoda. And don't underestimate the prisoners on each floor, because they were all veterans. Night Emperor, who had broken through to half-step Wu Sheng, thought he was invincible, and even wanted to fight one against many. As a result, he was immediately beaten up the moment he entered. On the same day the news spread. It didn't matter who spread it. What was important was that Li Qingyang and the others all knew about it. To be able to beat junior brother Knight to the point that he was carried out by Zhao Daodu, the strength of the prisoners in the prison was not simple. He had to be careful when he entered. The next day, Xiao Ziji came to the first floor of the prison and said proudly, I want to fight 10 of them. Heh. A prisoner laughed and said, Another arrogant guy. Brothers, serve him well. Whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, 10 burly prisoners surrounded him. They were all half-step Wu Sheng. Come on. Xiao Ziji didn't dare to be careless and directly summoned his shield. Boom, 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 boom. An hour later, the prison door opened again. Zhao Daodu supported Xiao Ziji, whose face was bruised and swollen, and walked out. He said, Senior Brother Xiao, let's fight one next time. No. I want to fight 10 more. Xiao Ziji walked the path of a meat shield. He was usually used to tank damage, so he needed more opponents to stimulate and increase his defense. He was not like Anyo, who just wanted to show off but got beaten before he could. Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, and the others entered the pagoda of confinement one after another. Because there was an attack and defense combination to scout the way, they chose to fight one-on-one conservatively. They won a lot of battles before they lost. Patriarch, Li Qingyang said, the prisoners in this prison are all very fierce. Sitting in the study room, Jun Changxiao put his legs on the table and smiled. So, this is a good place to gain experience. You guys have to go in and experience it more. Bringing all the prisoners of the 9 levels of hell into the Tianyuan prison pagoda was to create a stronger and crueler training ground for the sect. Now his wish had been fulfilled. Of course, it wasn't just the disciples. Even high-level elders could enter. After Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others took turns to fight, the Purple King found time to come to the first floor of the prison. He took off his clothes while fighting, which shocked the prisoners. Fuck. This guy must be crazy. Tianyuan prison pagoda could be said to be quite powerful, if one counted the 12 prison guards who were in charge of the prisoners. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the power inside could easily destroy any plane as long as it was released. Jun Changxiao would place it in the sect of all times most of the time. The internal power would almost never appear in the outside world. Therefore, the warriors living in the Falling Star continent would never dream that there was a dark force that could dominate the mortal universe where they lived. When I ascend, should I bring the prison with me? When studying the fortune-seizing array, Jun Changxiao had been thinking about this problem, especially when he ascended to the upper realm. Would the Falling Star continent be bullied by others? It was good to go to a stronger place, but this was home after all. He didn't want any problems to happen after he left, and he didn't want to be reduced to the situation of the Tianyuan continent. The best way was to leave behind absolute power, let the forces here know their place, and let the major planes be wary. The 12 prison guards and prisoners in the Tianyuan Seoul Pagoda were undoubtedly very suitable to protect the falling star continent. But the problem was, he had to get their absolute approval. The prisoners were easy to deal with. At most, he could let Area train them. Only the 12 prison guards were a little tricky. Opportunity. Jun Changshao frowned and said, I need an opportunity. Little brother. At this moment, by Rakshasa transmitted her voice. Another warship is coming. The system sharply ridiculed. Usually, this situation means that an opportunity is coming. Oh, Jun Changshao's eyes flashed with surprise. Hadn't the Starry Sky Fortress already been blown up by him? Why was there still someone looking for trouble? In the endless starry sky, a battleship with decent specifications and quality stopped. Who are you? Jun Changshao, who was floating in front of him, said lightly. A few warriors walked out of the cabin. The middle-aged man in the lead looked pale, as if he was injured. He cupped his hands and said, Jun Patriarch, please save our Tianhe continent. Jun Changshao was a little confused. However, from the other party's begging tone, he understood that they were not looking for trouble. So he asked, If you have something to say, come with me to the continent to talk. It's too late, the middle-aged man said in a hurried tone. Jun Patriarch, please help quickly, or our Tianhe continent will cease to exist. Friend, Jun Changshao shrugged and said, I don't think we know each other, right? You want me to save them, so I'll go save them? There are many people in this world who are in trouble. Even if I want to be chivalrous, I don't have the strength to do it. Whoosh! The middle-aged man waved his hand, and a large box full of spirit stones appeared on the deck. I remember now. Jun Changshao slapped his forehead and said in realization, We met once at the Starry Sky Fortress. The system roared. You know each other too quickly. There was no other way. Jun Patriarch, the middle-aged man said seriously, there are a total of 10 million rank 9 spirit stones here. Please help our Tianhe continent quickly. From the look in his eyes and tone, it was definitely an urgent matter that could not be delayed. I need to know the reason. Whoosh! After a while, the warriors who came to ask for help boarded the ancient warship and merged into the endless starry sky at an extremely fast speed, heading towards the Tianhe continent. Don't worry, everyone. Jun Changshao stood at the bow of the ship and said seriously, I will help you solve all your problems. 1 month ago, the Tianhe continent had a neighboring Nine Springs continent in the universe where it was located. After learning that the Starry Sky Fortress had been destroyed, it immediately removed the hypocrisy on its face and began to launch a large-scale invasion of its neighbor. Back then, this plane had been warned by the Starry Sky Fortress and even sent a patrol to make it behave. But when the restrictive force no longer existed, they naturally had no need to be afraid. The Nine Springs continent was very strong and belonged to the top echelon level in the mortal universe. The Tianhe continent could not compete at all. After thinking about it, they could only ask for help. Ask who? Whoever destroyed the Starry Sky Fortress, they would ask for help. So the warriors of the Tianhe continent, who had killed their way out of the encirclement, advanced quickly and finally found the falling star continent. On the way, Jun Changshao said, Our two families are far apart, and you found it in half a month. That's fast. The middle-aged man said, We have to thank City Lord Emo of the Nine Heavens continent. He was the one who gave us the precise location of Jun Patriarch's plane. We didn't take too many unnecessary detours. I see. Jun Changshao understood. Of course, Emo Shangxing not only provided the coordinates of the falling star continent, but also repeatedly reminded them before leaving that if they were going to ask for help, they had to show their sincerity. Otherwise, it would be easy to lose their way. The middle-aged man remembered it in his heart. After seeing Jun Changshao, he readily took out spirit stones. From the amount, it was obvious that he had the sincerity to enter. Sigh. If there were more people like City Lord Emo in the world, Gosheng would not be short of money. Nine Springs continent? Jun Changshao, standing at the bow of the ship with his hands behind his back, looked at the endless starry sky and thought to himself, I was worried about not having a chance, and you sent it over immediately. Hee hee. Chapter 1313. Not only Jun Changshao but also the Heaven Origin Soul-Suppressing Pagoda, Li Qingyang, and other core disciples were going to the Sky River continent. The Starry Sky Fortress was dangerous, so he didn't bring any disciples. But this time, he was going to help other planes, so he could take the opportunity to gain experience. Second senior brother, Su Xiaoma said excitedly. I'm a little excited. Me too. Li Fei clenched his fists and said, I feel like my blood is burning. Calm down, Li Qingyang said with his eyes closed. Lu Qianqian was the only one who was really calm. She stood on the deck. Her cold face and clear eyes didn't reveal any emotion. Only when she glanced at Jun Changshao occasionally did a trace of fluctuation appear. This man not only made the sect the strongest in the Falling Star continent, but now he was really going to conquer the Sea of Stars. TSK. Yi Xingchen, who was leaning against the cabin door, snorted coldly. He didn't look like he was in a sorry state when Zhao Daodu carried him out of the prison. Long Xiang, Li Tian, and the others were sharpening their swords in their cabins, waiting to reach the strange world and start an exciting journey of killing. Of course, Jun Changshao wouldn't let the disciples fight against strong martial artists, so he would definitely rely on the Heaven Origin Soul-Suppressing Pagoda to deal with the Nine Springs continent. After this treasure was modified, it was placed in the sect of all times as the Pagoda of Prison. Once it was taken out, it would be the Pagoda of Soul-Suppressing Pagoda. Not only could it be used for defense and suppression, but it could also summon a large number of prisoners. I can't wait, Jun Changshao said. A plane invading another plane would definitely be a large-scale scene. All the prisoners in the pagoda would be released, and the scene would definitely be as beautiful as a painting. Not to mention, this was a chivalrous act. The 12 wardens would definitely agree with him because of this. Bah! The system spat and said, You have the nerve to say that you are chivalrous after accepting other people's spirit stones. The Sky River continent. In terms of overall strength, it was weaker than the Nine Springs continent and far stronger than the Falling Star continent. However, this plane, which could be considered a second-tier plane, was currently engulfed in the flames of war and riddled with holes. Boom! Boom! The sound of cannonball-like bombardment rang out above an extremely high-level city, and the invisible defensive enchantment gradually revealed itself. Half of the thousands of formation masters in the city, who were responsible for supporting the formation, were sent flying, and were replaced by others. The city they were guarding was called the Tianying City, which was the second largest city in the Tianhe continent. Once it fell, most of the entire plain would fall completely. Therefore, even if they were facing millions of soldiers, even if they had powerful siege weapons, the defenders of the city were completely unafraid of death and did not retreat in the slightest. Reload! Thousands of meters away from the city, a general in pitch-black armor shouted. Shua! Shua! Hundreds of soldiers carried the heavy spheres and placed them on the catapults, starting to adjust and calibrate them. This was a siege weapon that the Nine Springs continent had created to invade other planes. It was powered by a formation and used crystal cores as bombs to produce extremely strong explosive power. The Tianhe continent had already lost more than 20 large cities, and without exception, all of them were blown up by this thing. Quick! Reinforce the formation! The general of the Tianying city shouted. Buzz! Buzz! Thousands of formation masters released their souls at the same time, once again reinforcing the crumbling great city defense array. Although they knew that they might not be able to withstand the continuous bombardment, they had their people behind them. At this time, they had to stand up and fight with their lives on the line. Fire! The general of the Nine Springs continent shouted. Whoosh! 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 In an instant, hundreds of powerful crystal core bombs were thrown. After they collided with the barrier of the city defense array, they immediately caused an earth-shaking explosion. When everything calmed down, cracks had already appeared on the great city defense array, and more than half of the formation masters responsible for supporting it were also injured. General, the deputy general standing on the city tower said sorrowfully, I'm afraid the great city defense array won't be able to last much longer. It's better to rush out and fight to the death with them. I agree. Since there's no way to reverse the situation, we'll make a profit by killing one. Standing next to him, the powerhouses of the Tianhe continent, who were mostly at the level of half-saints and Wuxia agreed. Under normal circumstances, when there was a war between planes, there would be a restriction on the realm. For example, in the Falling Star continent, those above the Martial King realm were not allowed to fight. The Tianhe continent also had such a rule, but it was only limited to internal affairs. Now that the Nine Springs continent was attacking as an invader, and there were all kinds of powerhouses from the Wu Huang and Wu Sheng, the so-called realm restriction naturally did not exist. No, the general of the city guard said in a deep voice, we can only choose to defend to the death. The other party was strong and powerful. If they were to let their emotions affect their decisions, and remove the great city defense array to fight, it would only accelerate the destruction of the city, and give up most of the territory behind them. Continue to reinforce the great city defense array. The general shouted, wait for reinforcements to come to help. Reinforcements. Everyone felt bitter in their hearts. This time, the Nine Springs continent invaded the Tianhe continent, and it was obvious that they had been preparing for many years. Moreover, they had divided their forces to attack the important cities. Who could come to help at this time? Look, at this moment, the deputy general's eyes widened and pointed to the sky. Everyone looked up and saw a sudden flash of light in the distance. Whoosh! In an instant, in the battlefield of Tianying City, billowing waves of air suddenly emerged, and a warship emitting a desolate aura gradually appeared. The powerhouses from the Nine Springs continent frowned. Everyone. Suddenly, a voice came from the warship. Give June some face and stop fighting. Whoosh whoosh. The cold wind blew away the air waves around the warship. Jun Changshao, wearing sunglasses and a mink coat, walked over with a cigar in his mouth. Behind him were Yi Xingchen, Li Qingyang, and the others, who were carrying a sound system. Swish! Xiao Zuiji took a big stride forward and skillfully arranged the chair. Swish! Jun Changshao shook his shoulders, and the mink coat fell off, and was caught by Su Xiaoma. Then, he sat down elegantly, and faced the hundreds of throwing machines in a row in front of him. Ta! Ta! Li Qingyang and the other disciples stopped and stood proudly with their hands behind their backs. Their way of entering the scene was extremely flashy. TSK. The powerhouses from the Nine Springs continent sneered. From their expressions, it was obvious that they did not intend to give face to the dog Tharch. It was normal. After all, they did not eat the fruit of face. Moreover, the Nine Springs continent already had the absolute advantage. Taking down Tianying City would be a piece of cake. How could they give it up so easily? Kid. The general in charge of this attack said in a deep voice. Who are you? Jun Changshao took off his sunglasses and ran his fingers through his hair. He said, Jun Changshao, leader of the Martial Alliance of the Falling Star Continent, patriarch of the Sect of all times. Falling Star Continent? I think it's an unrated plane. Hired help. Don't be ridiculous. Asking an unrated plane for help? Is the Tianhe continent crazy? The powerhouses from the Nine Springs continent discussed with disdain. Unrated. Jun Changshao threw away the cigar and rubbed it with his feet. Then, he leaned back in his chair and interlocked his fingers. With a cold gaze he said, You have to take full responsibility for every word you say. Kid. A powerhouse from the Nine Springs continent flew out from the camp. He gathered powerful psionic energy in his right hand and said with killing intent, Stop pretending. Boom! Suddenly, there was a deafening explosion. The head of the person who rushed over was pierced, and he fell to the ground with a plop. Swoosh! Jun Changshao rested the smoking AWM sniper rifle on his shoulder and said, I'm pretending. What can you do? You're courting death. The general in charge of the attack raised his hand and shouted, Blast him to smithereens! Smack! As soon as he said that, Jun Changshao appeared in front of him. He gently pressed the Desert Eagle against the general's temple and said coldly, You can try. Boom! 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 On the other side, Li Qingyang and Yi Xingchen rushed over and dismantled the 100 catapults. Then, they skillfully stored them in their spatial rings. Huff huff. Huff huff huff. The powerhouses from the Nine Springs continent were unhappy. They rolled up their sleeves and were about to rush over. However, in the next second they were all dumbfounded, because near the guy who held the general hostage, a large group of people suddenly appeared. They were wearing strange costumes similar to zebras. Their hands were bound by chains. Some were shaking their heads, some were squatting, some were combing their hair, and some were posing seductively. The aura that filled the air was quite terrifying. Come on. Jun Changshao hooked his finger and shouted, have fun. Chapter 13-14. When the Nine Springs continent invaded the Heavenly River continent, they sent many top powerhouses to hold the line. Jun Changxiao's sudden appearance and flashy kidnapping of the siege commander made them unhappy. Where did this arrogant guy come from? How dare he kill our people? If we don't beat you up today, you won't know why the flowers are so red. As expected of the first-tier plane in the mortal universe, there were hundreds of half-Saint Wu Sheng's aura. It was no wonder that the upper realm did not allow them to participate in the dimensional battlefield. Li Qingyang and the others would not be able to withstand such a situation. Therefore, Jun Changshao did not hesitate to release all the prisoners in the Soul Pagoda. In an instant, a group of burly and fierce-looking powerhouses appeared on the battlefield outside the city. Their eyes were filled with excitement. Jun Patriarch said that if they were summoned to participate in the battle, those who performed well would be rewarded with merit points. In the past, when they were imprisoned in the 9 levels of hell, their only joy was to bully the newcomers. Now that they were imprisoned in the Tianyuan Prison Pagoda, the situation was different. Because Jun Changshao was more humane, they could earn merit points to exchange for temporary freedom. Therefore, they had a goal and motivation to fight. The prisoners were all released. The scene was shocking. As for the powerhouses from the Nine Springs continent who had rolled up their sleeves and were ready to rush forward, they stood in place with dull expressions. Their fierce gazes were replaced by horror. You have hundreds of half-Saint Wu Sheng? Sorry, I have tens of thousands here. Righteous, evil, devil, demon, all kinds of people. Please choose as you wish. Jun Changshao only released the prisoners. He had not released the main culprit. Otherwise, it would be obvious that he was bullying them. In fact, he was also bullying them now. They only had a few hundred people, but he had tens of thousands of them. Just the aura of his cultivation alone was enough to make the powerhouses from the Nine Springs continent breathless. If you don't give me face, Jun won't give you any face. Jun Changxiao's expression changed and he said coldly, kill them all. Leave no one alive. On the way here, he had already found out about the ambitions of the Nine Springs continent, but they were afraid of the Starry Sky Fortress and did not dare to act recklessly. The best way to deal with such restless people was to give them a heavy blow. Only by truly tasting pain would they understand what could be done and what could not be done. Kill. Kill. The prisoners immediately rushed over. Because there were achievement points that could be obtained, his performance could be described as that of a rabid dog. No. The experts of the Nine Springs continent howled in despair. Boom. 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 On the battlefield, all kinds of energy burst out wantonly. It could be said to be earth-shaking. The Nine Springs continent could not compare in terms of numbers and strength, so what awaited them was destined to be a tragedy. Boom. 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 After a short while, the smoke on the battlefield gradually subsided. The prisoners were scattered all over the place. Some were fixing their hair, some were sitting on rocks, and some were wiping off the bloodstains on their clothes. The ground beneath their feet was already littered with corpses and rivers of blood. All dead. On the city tower of Heavenly Hero City, the expressions of the generals and experts were completely frozen. The experts sent by the Nine Springs continent were extremely strong. Once their city protection array was blown up, they would not be able to face them. Now that they were all annihilated, how terrifying was that? Gulp. The general, who had been stabbed in the temple by the desert eagle, swallowed his saliva. His eyes were filled with fear and shock. Jun Changshao said indifferently, do you understand this situation? Yes. Tell the soldiers to put down their weapons. I don't want to kill more people. There were still millions of Nine Springs continent soldiers on the battlefield. If they really wanted to kill them, it would be very easy. Put down your weapons, the general shouted in a trembling voice. Therefore, the soldiers in the field of vision put down their weapons and armor, then squatted on the ground and held their heads, looking like defeated prisoners. As the first-tier plane, the materials of the equipment were definitely strong. Therefore, Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji separated and kept them in the space ring. As for the hundreds of experts who were killed, they could not avoid it. All kinds of martial arts resources were gathered in Jun Changxiao's hands. This is still the fastest way to earn money. In the future, I can be a peacemaker and go wherever there is a war. The system complained. Peace my ass. Xiao. Xiao. Suddenly, dozens of streams of light flew in from the sky, and then hovered above the battlefield. A group of experts with strong auras appeared, their eyes flashing with anger. TSK, Jun Changxiao said in surprise. As expected of the first-tier plane, sending so many void-piercing realm experts so casually. Elder Dong. The general hurriedly shouted, Save me. Pung. The bullet burst out from the muzzle, and directly passed through the temple. Jun Changxiao did not have Bai Qi's determination to kill hundreds of thousands of soldiers, so he only killed the general. However, this action of killing one of their own in front of them completely angered the 10 lower void-piercing realm experts, and 2 middle void-piercing realm experts who were hovering in the air. Kill them all along with the city. Swish, swish. 10 lower void-piercing realm experts rushed down, and all kinds of energy burst out like stormy waves. Boom, boom. A fierce wind rose on the battlefield, and dust flew everywhere. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, 9 sword lights flew out from within, first passing by the 10 lower void-piercing realm experts, and then gathering in front of the 2 middle void-piercing realm experts. Who? Ifeishua. This sword master's understanding of the sword path was really superb. Just now, the 9 swords flew out and combined into one special effect was simply too cool. Poochie, Poochie. The clothes of the 10 lower void-piercing tier martial artists that flitted past were all torn apart, leaving only their underpants hanging in midair. The scene presented was even more unsightly than that of the purple craggy beast king, because there were actually some that were wearing different colors. The brothers had no time to blush, and their hearts were completely overwhelmed with shock, because they knew that if the sword chi that flew past them just now had the slightest killing intent, their heads would have already fallen to the ground. You! The 2 middle void-piercing realm experts' eyes gradually widened, and they said in shock, Sword Path 9 addicts. Ifeishua. Sigh. Ifeishua sighed and said, After being locked in the 9th layer of hell for so many years, I didn't expect that someone would still recognize me. The expressions on the faces of the 2 middle void-piercing realm experts became interesting. They didn't know Ifeishua, but they had heard of this person. The most iconic thing was that he was equipped with 9 extraordinary swords that never left his body. So he was called the Sword Path 9 addicts. For such a famous swordsman to suddenly appear in the Sky River continent was really incredible. Wait! The burly man standing in front of the prisoners and taking the bombardment of the 10 companions with his body looked a bit familiar. Could it be the Iron Marquis, who boasted the strongest body in the mortal plane? All of a sudden, the 2 middle void-piercing realm experts remembered something. Not long ago, the Starry Sky Fortress was blown up, and the fortress master was also obliterated. The murderer finally took the prisoners and left on the warship. Ifeishua and Iron Marquis were locked in the 9th layer of hell. This was something that the circle of top experts knew. Now that they appeared here, then thinking of this, the 2 experts of the 9 Springs continent's face stiffened, and then they tried to look at the young man who shot the commander. Their voice trembled as they said, The murderer who destroyed the Starry Sky Fortress, could it be him? Chapter 13-15. What was a real master? It was a master who never went into battle himself. Just sending out a bodyguard was enough to shock people. Jun Changxiao did it. 9 swords flew out and merged into one bodyguard. Ifeishua. was a well-known figure in the mortal universe. His deeds were widely spread in the top circles. There was also Marquis Ironrobe. Although his strength was only at the lower level of the void-piercing realm, his reputation was not small. To put it bluntly, anyone who was locked in the 9 levels of hell, as the main culprit, had a reputation in the mortal universe. A starry sky navigation king with the strength of a marshal was very strong, right? Sorry, he could only be considered a little brother in front of them. Strictly speaking, he could only be considered a little grandson. Therefore, Jun Changshao did not make a move. He directly sent out 2 main culprits, which shocked the 2 middle-level void-piercing realms of the 9 Springs continent on the spot. The 2 began to seriously analyze his identity until they combined the latest news and came to a conclusion. That's right. Go Sheng said proudly, it's me. The 2 powerhouses of the 9 Springs continent almost fainted. The young man who could stand below and act cool, without making a move, was actually the culprit who blew up the Starry Sky Fortress and killed the fortress master. It's over, it's over. This time they were in big trouble. They were not the only ones who were shocked. The generals in many powerhouses, standing on the tower of Tianying City, also widened their eyes. The news of the Starry Sky Fortress being destroyed had already spread in many top plains and continents. The Tianhe continent naturally heard about it, but they never thought that such a super ruthless person would appear in their own territory. It seemed that he was here to help. In a word, the main thing was that money was in place. Of course, Jun Changshao, who took the money, was also responsible. He said lightly, from now on, the Tianhe continent is under my protection. Anyone who dares to provoke us is going against me, Jun Changshao. Before his identity was known, these words were despised. But now, understood. Understood. The powerhouse of the 9 Springs continent called Elder Dong hurriedly said, we will withdraw from the Tianhe continent now. We will never invade again. If it was someone else, even if they were stronger, they might still fight. Now that they knew that the other party was the culprit who destroyed the Starry Sky Fortress, they could only cower instantly. Because if they dared to destroy an organization that maintained order in the mortal universe, why wouldn't they dare to destroy a plane? Scram! Jun Changshao said indifferently. The 2 middle-level void-piercing tier cultivators hurriedly slipped away, and the million soldiers also boarded the Starry Sky battleships and disappeared one after another. It could be said that the evacuation speed was extremely fast. They left. Heavenly Hero City is safe. After the murderous aura that shrouded the heavens and the earth completely dissipated, the soldiers and civilians in the city all cheered loudly. Jun Patriarch. The wounded middle-aged man walked down from the warship. Because he was too excited, he directly knelt down and said gratefully, my Sky River continent will always remember your great kindness. Jun Changshao stopped him from kneeling down and said, taking someone's money, helping them avert disaster. No need to be so formal. Although this guy was greedy for money, he would definitely do things seriously after receiving benefits from others. Therefore, even if it was a weakness, it was also a strength. Here came the problem. If the one who gave the money was from the 9 Springs continent, would Jun Changshao help to bully people? Readers of this book who ridiculed the Mad Demon No. 1 Doryman would definitely say in this chapter that Go Sheng was an unpardonable scumbag villain. But in fact, not only would Jun Changshao not help, he would even take the opportunity to extort them, because it involved the bottom line and the issue of principles. The 9 Springs continent retreated, and the Sky River continent returned to peace. Jun Changshao was not responsible for the aftermath, so he didn't even eat the specially arranged banquet and left with his disciples. After all, at his level, unless he wanted to satisfy his appetite, it was no problem to starve for a few years. The most important thing was, before leaving, he gave 10 million spirit stones and a large amount of martial arts resources. A gentleman loves money. Go Sheng, who was standing at the bow of the ship, said loudly, you took it in the right way. The Sky River continent was invaded and could be destroyed at any time. Was it unreasonable to accept 20 million spirit stones to help resolve the crisis? Was there anything wrong with that? Not only was there nothing wrong with that, it was engraved in the hearts of others. A few days later, A stone statue of Jun Changshao was erected in Tianying City. There were also paintings of him and his disciples walking down from the warship, surrounded by a large number of prisoners, for the descendants of the Sky River continent to worship. Hero. Our great hero. The Nine Springs continent. The entire plain was shrouded in an austere atmosphere. At this moment, the ancient warship floated quietly in the sky above the Nine Springs imperial city, which represented absolute power. Jun Changshao sat at the bow of the ship, looking disdainfully at the world. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others stood with their hands behind their backs, their faces filled with determination. The prisoners locked in the pagoda of confinement had all come out. Some hung below the warship, while others squatted on the city wall with sinister smiles on their faces. The 12 prison wardens also appeared. They spread out around the city with their arms crossed, forming a circle. The cloaks with the word chivalry on them fluttered in the wind, and the solemn expressions of the admirals appeared on their faces. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh whoosh whoosh. None of them released their cultivation, but the aura they emitted was like Mount Tai pressing down on the entire city, causing all the cultivators in the city to tremble in fear. Gulp. A middle-aged man in luxurious clothes with the demeanor of an emperor stood in front of the palace hall and swallowed with difficulty. His eyes flashed with intense fear. He was the ruler of the Nine Springs continent, the culprit behind the invasion of the Sky River continent. He was extremely vexed now. Why did he do such a thing? In the end, not only did he not gain any benefits, but he also attracted a ruthless person. Back then, the Starry Sky Fortress had sent a patrol to warn him. The scene was not too big, and the shock it brought was not very strong. Jun Changshao was different. He directly led the prisoners and the 12 prison wardens to the city. The pressure from his strength and aura was unprecedentedly strong. It was definitely enough to be engraved in one's heart. To put it bluntly, the Starry Sky Fortress was more conservative and traditional. Go Sheng was the exact opposite. He was as strong as he could be. He had to smash the enemy with a hammer. He had to smash the enemy's psychological shadow with a hammer. Have you thought it through? The Emperor of the Nine Springs continent collapsed. Jun Patriarch, 100 million ninth-grade spirit stones is too much. Jun Changshao impatiently interrupted. You don't need to explain. You just need to act. If you don't. He paused for a moment before continuing. Then, I will personally order people to search the continent. Yes. The Emperor of the Nine Springs continent hurriedly said. If they searched the continent, wouldn't it be obvious that they were going to rob? If they took away all kinds of martial arts resources, the loss would definitely be more than 100 million. Hundreds of mainstay powerhouses died in the Sky River continent. If their homes were turned upside down, it was very likely that they would not be able to recover from this setback. After weighing the pros and cons, the Emperor of the Nine Springs continent endured the heart-wrenching pain and took out 100 million ninth-grade spirit stones from the national treasury. He only hoped that the other party would leave quickly and stop using the prisoners and the patrol wardens to suppress him. However, Jun Changshao took the money and did not leave. He continued to sit on the bow of the ship and said with a cold gaze, Remember this. If the Starry Sky Fortress is gone, I will replace it. If anyone from any plane dares to do as they please in the mortal universe, they will receive eternal punishment. Chapter 13:16. The Eternal Punishment Order. This was something that Jun Changshao had thought of on the spot. In his initial plan, as long as this order was issued to warriors and planes, they would definitely be attacked by the Sect of all times. There were currently 12 of these tokens, and they were held by the deputy warden of Tianyuan Prison Pagoda, Zhao Daodu. Once it was issued, there would be 12 wardens in charge of enforcing it. Just as Jun Changshao boarded the warship and flew into the Nine Springs continent, the first Eternal Punishment Order was already stuck in the palace hall. In the future, whenever the Eternal Punishment Order was issued, unless all 12 tokens were used, the number of people would be decided by the tokens. Today's scene of the 12 wardens surrounding the city would not happen again. Understood. The Emperor of the Nine Springs continent hurriedly said. The Nine Springs continent will know our place from now on. We will never invade our neighbors again. Swish! The eternal punishment order flew out from the palace hall and landed in Jun Changxiao's hand. He said calmly, "I'll give you one more chance. If you do it again, you and the entire plane will be destroyed." Swish! 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 The prisoners and the 12 wardens returned to the warship and flew out under the watchful eyes of the warriors of the Nine Springs continent. Plop! Plop! When Jun Changxiao completely merged with the universe, the killing aura in the entire plane dissipated. The emperor of the Nine Springs continent and many other nobles and ministers sat on the ground, paralyzed. They were on the verge of breaking down. This guy is even more tyrannical than the Universal Fortress. Yes, Gosheng did not follow the rules of the Universal Fortress, where anyone who made a mistake would be arrested. Instead, he used the tokens to decide. If anyone went overboard, he would send experts to punish them. It was extremely tyrannical. No. On the way, Jun Changxiao took out the name list given by City Lord Mo and said seriously, "I need to spread the news and let them know about the existence of the Eternal Punishment Order." The system said, "I understand now." The host created the Eternal Punishment Order to find an excuse for his blatant extortion. The various planes that came to help the Universal Fortress were unlucky, because in the following time, the ancient warship broke through the space barrier and appeared at their doorstep. Do you remember it? Jun Changxiao flashed 12 eternal punishment decrees. Got it, got it. A certain big shot nodded and bowed. Jun Changxiao said, "Of course, Jun's meaning is also very simple. He hopes that everyone can live in harmony in the future, and let the entire mortal universe be filled with love." Jun Patriarch's painstaking efforts are truly admirable. In the face of absolute power, Gosheng could be said to be the ruler of the mortal world. Any powerhouse from any plane had to be respectful to him. Previously at the Starry Sky Fortress, pay up. The discerning planes immediately handed over enough spirit stones, as soon as Jun Changxiao opened his mouth, and sent him off with a forced smile. He was finally gone. The demon was finally gone. However, all the major existential planes remembered the eternal punishment edict in their hearts. They also realized that Jun Changxiao was going to replace the Starry Sky Fortresses and manage the mortal universe. Snatching the job of the higher realm, this guy was really something. The planes that came to help the Starry Sky Fortresses were only the tip of the iceberg. Therefore, the eternal punishment edict had to be spread by the powerhouses of the various planes. Therefore, the name of the patriarch of the Starfall Continent Sect of all times began to spread throughout the mortal universe. To be able to destroy the Starry Sky Fortresses and replace them, he's definitely a powerful person. When I have time, I must pay him a visit. I heard that many planes are preparing to go to the Starfall Continent to sell things. Is that so? We can go and take a look. The underground black market was gone with the explosion of the Starry Sky Fortresses. However, the various planes still needed to trade, so they subconsciously chose to go to the remote Starfall continent. As for why many continents were in a hurry to go there, it was also because Jun Changxiao had not only explained the Eternal Punishment Edict in detail during his visit, but also introduced Strongbone Town and various preferential policies. In the face of such a direct hint, who would have the courage not to sell the heaven and earth treasures? It could be said that the Starfall continent ushered in the era of the Emperor's control. After the destruction of the Starry Sky Fortresses, the mortal planes entered a new era under the rule of the Dog Emperor. Unfortunately, the new main mission was to bring the Sect to the higher realm. If it was to dominate the entire mortal universe, Jun Changxiao would definitely meet the mission criteria. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Starry Sky warships headed toward the unfamiliar Starfall continent. Before long, it would bring an unimaginable shock to the local residents. Sect of all times. Jun Changxiao placed the Tianyuan Prism Pagoda underground and began to think about how to spread the Eternal Punishment Edict. After all, the mortal universe was too big, and there were as many planes as the sands of the Ganges River. Simple, the system said. You can go to the dimensional battlefield. That makes sense. Jun Changxiao's eyes lit up. As a place where all the continents gathered, it was like a tavern with all kinds of people. It should be easy to pass the news to them, and then spread it to other planes. On that day, Jun Changshao used the teleportation gate to enter the battlefield. He wondered if he could use this thing to achieve free passage between the upper and lower worlds, if he ascended to the higher realm one day. The system said, "This idea is very Gosheng." The teleportation gate could enter the dimensional battlefield at any time regardless of the environment or the occasion. As long as people successfully entered, they would have many ways to return to the Starfall continent. So in theory it seemed feasible. "I'm just afraid that this thing will lose its effect when you reach the higher realm," the system said. "It's settled," Jun Changshao said. "Now that you mention it, it will definitely work." The system roared. "I'm not a reverse poison healer." "I know. You're the most face-slapped system." The Starfall continent stronghold was still the same, with the floating mountain as the center, and the 4 districts as support. The only difference was that the spatial barrier that was bitten by the space-time worm last time was still in the shape of a gap. It seemed that the higher realm had not repaired it. They had painstakingly sewn it and even sealed it, but it was easily bitten by the space-time worm. Who the hell could stand it? So the attitude of the higher-ups was that they did not care anymore. Without the stronghold's barrier defense, anyone could enter at will. However, after Jun Changshao left, even if the martial artists passed by occasionally and looked at the large-scale city and the few floating mountains, no one dared to muster the courage to enter, because the patriarch of the sect of all times was not to be trifled with. Thud! Jun Changshao walked in through the teleportation gate. However, before he could stabilize his body on the training field of the main peak, the fragrance of roses slowly drifted to his nose. Gosheng turned his head stiffly and saw the graceful Rose Queen under the peach tree at the edge of the main peak. She flipped her black hair and smiled sweetly. "Husband, you're here to see me?" This woman had been in the dimensional battlefield recently. After all, she had to build the Soul Continent stronghold to a certain scale before she could leave. The major planes were wary of Madame Jun's identity, so Rose Queen was not in any danger on the battlefield. As for expanding the stronghold's scale, it would only take time, so she would come here to play when she had nothing to do. "Why are you here?" Jun Changshao did not know that the higher realm had already left the Starfall continent stronghold alone. Rose Queen leaned her hands behind her back and walked over with her fingers hooked together. She smiled and said, "The major planes are afraid of me and are avoiding me. Building a stronghold is quite boring, so I come here every day to wait for you." "Every day?" Jun Changshao was stunned. Rose Queen stopped in front of him, raised her head slightly, and raised her fingers. She asked, "You're wearing a wig, right?" Jun Changshao grabbed 2 tufts of black hair and pulled hard, almost pulling his scalp off. He roared, "This is real hair, I'm not bald." Chapter 13-17. I still prefer your bald head. Why don't you shave it? Actually, you're not bad with hair either. I quite like it. Jun Changshao was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Ever since he met Rose Queen, he had been thinking about his hair. "Big sister, go see a doctor if you're sick." Rose Queen smiled. "I believed that you would come visit me on the battlefield, so I waited at your base every day. As expected, I guessed right." There was a hint of pride in her words, as if she was acting coquettishly in front of her man. She was completely different from the noble and decisive woman she usually was. However, she guessed right about coming to the interdimensional battlefield, but the reason was wrong. Jun Changshao was not visiting his wife in name, but to use the battlefield platform to spread the eternal punishment order. Right. He remembered something very important, so he said seriously, "I destroyed the interstellar fortress and replaced it. From today onwards, your Spiritas continent will not invade other planes." Rose Queen was stunned. "You destroyed the interstellar fortress?" She, who had been fighting outside for many years, had naturally heard of that organization that even the mortal planes feared. She heard that it was even related to the higher realms. Jun Changshao raised his head and said proudly, "Destroying an interstellar fortress is as easy as flipping my hand." Please don't be surprised. The system said. Why is he so good at pretending? I'm not surprised. Rose Queen said seriously. I'm just a little surprised that my husband would take precious time to destroy an insignificant interstellar fortress. The system said. The host pretends and the wife pretends. This is a perfect match. Jun Changshao said. I've created the eternal punishment order. Anyone who violates it will be punished by the sect of all times. So I hope you'll take care of yourself and not invade other planes. Because of their racist theurgy, the Spiritus continent loved to sneak into other planes and seize the opportunity to plunder martial arts resources. Since Jun Changshao wanted to control the mortal universe, he would definitely not allow such a situation to happen again. Moreover, even if he did not want to admit it, the outside world knew that woman was his wife. If he did not restrict her, he would definitely be questioned. Okay. Rose Queen smiled and said, I will listen to my husband. I'm being serious here. I'm also very serious. Jun Changshao roared. Then can you move your eyes away from my hair when you speak? Can you not always raise your hand to grab it? All right. Queen Rose looked at him and said, the environment of our continent is terrible, and our resources are limited. If we don't go to other planes to search, we will eventually become dust in the annals of history. This isn't a reason for you to plunder unscrupulously. Jun Changshao said, if the environment isn't good, it can be changed. If there aren't enough resources, it can be cultivated. How to change? How to cultivate? When it came to serious matters, Rose Queen became serious, and a bitter smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. If she had a choice, who would like to go on expeditions everywhere? However, she had to bear the fate of the entire race on her shoulders, so she had no choice but to work hard after inheriting the throne. Jun Changshao said, the solution is to be thought of, not asked. Husband, help me think of a solution. Rose Queen really couldn't think of a solution, but she firmly believed that Jun Changshao would be able to help her. After all, he had relied on a god equipment to connect the collapsed soul continent together. We'll talk about it in the future. Jun Changshao said, I still have important matters to attend to. Changing the environment and cultivating resources was just something he said casually. He definitely didn't have any good ideas. Yes, the system said. In the system store. Scram. Jun Changshao needed to spread the news of the eternal punishment order, so he went to the Lingyuan continent to look for Kuji Nan. After some discussion, they decided to send out invitations to all the leaders of the strongholds on the battlefield. Why is that guy here again? He's not sending out invitations to extort money, right? Let's go quickly. I'm afraid he'll cause trouble for us again if we're late. After receiving the hot invitation, all the stronghold bosses hurriedly took action. Some of them had already prepared martial arts resources in advance. If the other party really wanted to extort money, they could only give it to him. Otherwise, why would they fight him head-on? It was still uncertain whether Jun Changshao could dominate the entire mortal universe, but there was no doubt that he could dominate the entire battlefield. After all, the few times he caused trouble here were all world-shaking. The next day, outside the stronghold on the Starfall continent, on the arena previously used for challenges, Jun Changshao stood with his hands behind his back. There was a gentle smile on his face. Rose Queen next to him was also dressed very formally. Although her aura was very strong, she was still deliberately restraining herself and didn't declare war. Jun Changshao was on the verge of collapse. He sent a voice transmission. Can you go down? I'm your wife. Shouldn't I be standing next to you? Rose Queen said. Jun Changshao was just about to speak when a realm boss cupped his hands and said, Jun Patriarch, why did you summon us here? All the stronghold bosses below the arena perked up their ears. Cough. Jun Changshao moistened his throat with a smile. Then he said in a clear voice, this king has invited all of you here for one thing. And that is, he waved his hand and placed the 12 eternal punishment tokens on the table. Then he said, I want you to remember these things. What is this? Everyone looked over and muttered in their hearts. Could it be some kind of treasure? This is the eternal punishment order, Jun Chang said with a smile. It was created by the Eternal Sect. Its function is to punish anyone who has committed an unforgivable crime in the mortal universe in any plane. As long as they receive this order, they will be severely punished. All the stronghold bosses were a little stunned. Could it be that he wanted to use this token to control the entire mortal universe? Would the Starfall Fortress agree? All the stronghold bosses present had heard of this powerful organization in their own realms. Therefore, when Jun Changshao wanted to control the entire mortal universe, the first thing he thought of was this organization. Jun Patriarch, Kujinan said. As far as I know, there's a Starfall Fortress that created many laws. Those who violate them will be locked up in the 9 levels of hell. Did they allow you to do this? There's no more Starfall Fortress in the mortal universe, because I've already destroyed it, Jun Changshao said calmly. What? Kujinan said. The Starfall Fortress was destroyed by Jun Patriarch? From the worry that appeared when he asked the question to the shock that appeared when he found out the truth, his performance was flawless. He was indeed Go Sheng's golden old partner in the planar battlefield. All the stronghold bosses were stunned at this moment. Apart from City Lord Mo, they had been on the battlefield all along and hadn't received news of the fortress destruction. Therefore, when they suddenly heard Jun Changshao say this, their hearts were definitely in turmoil. The Starfall Fortress had a supreme status in the mortal universe. Now that it had been destroyed by the Patriarch of the Sect of all times, then, he really had the right to replace it. Everyone, Jun Changshao said, please spread the news to your own realms, and spread the news of the Eternal Punishment Order. When the stronghold bosses heard this, they instantly understood that the other party didn't gather them to think of a way to extort money. Instead, he wanted them to spread the news. That's good, that's good. The stone weighing on their hearts was finally lifted. Therefore, they all expressed their willingness to spread the news of the Eternal Punishment Order. Since that's the case, you may all disperse. Goodbye. When the powerhouses of the various realms left, they all sighed in their hearts. It's rare to be able to return safely from the Starfall continent without losing money. Chapter 13:18. Floating Mountain. Under the same peach tree, Rose Queen looked at the figure walking towards the whirlpool and complained, "Aren't you going to stay for a few more days?" Happiness was always short-lived, because Jun Changshao had to leave after finishing his business. "I still have important things to do." "What things?" "Studying the great array of heaven and earth." "Oh," Rose Queen smiled and said, "Then I won't disturb you." She seemed to be a little clingy to Jun Changshao, but in fact, she knew that he must have a lot of things to deal with when managing a sect. Not to mention, she also had to lead her clansmen on the battlefield. Love was only a small part of life. Most of the time, she had to focus on her career. Jun Changshao got up and walked towards the whirlpool. However, just as he was about to enter, he stopped with his back facing her and said, "After leaving this time, I might not come in again, so you don't have to come to the stronghold every day to wait." After saying this, he continued to walk until his entire figure disappeared into the whirlpool. Rose Queen said bitterly to herself, "Do I have to deprive you of even a little bit of my right to think about you?" Whoosh! The wind blew, and peach blossoms flew everywhere. The seemingly gentle woman gradually became noble, and her eyes regained their former decisiveness and sharpness. When Jun Changshao was around, she gave people the feeling of a little woman. When Jun Changshao was not around, she was the queen who ruled the plain and led the clan forward. Falling Star Continent Sect of all times. Jun Changshao had already walked out of the whirlpool, but he stood there in a daze for a while before saying in his heart, "I'm sorry." Yo-yo. The system was rather surprised. The host's personality has changed greatly, to actually feel guilty towards his wife. Fuck off. I can already determine whether Rose Queen is an exclamation mark or a full stop in the host's heart. Jun Changshao couldn't be bothered with him. He returned to the study and began to comprehend the great array of heaven and earth. Many things had been dealt with. Next, it was time to focus all his energy on the sect's ascension. The large amount of martial arts resources that had been extorted from the various material planes had been invested in the operation of the sect, and the disciples' cultivation had improved once again. However, there was not much time left for them, because Jun Changshao had to complete the mission within 10 years. At that time, regardless of their cultivation level, they would have to follow him. It was impossible for Jun Changshao to keep the matter of the sect's ascension a secret forever. Therefore, he found a time to gather the upper echelons and core disciples for a meeting of the highest standards. What? Ding Xingwang immediately stood up from his chair and said in disbelief, Want to go to the higher realm? Even Elder Wei, who was usually the calmest, widened his eyes and said, Patriarch, are you joking? No. Jun Changshao interlocked his fingers and said seriously, I'm very serious. Jiangya, the Ning brothers, and the others all fell silent. The patriarch's expression was indeed very serious. In other words, they were really going to ascend to the upper realm. It was too shocking. Let me calm down first. Patriarch, Li Qingyang said, to ascend to the upper realm, one needs to be at least a martial emperor. Cultivation level is not a problem. I will think of a way. Jun Changshao said, you just need to be mentally prepared. Once you enter the upper realm, you will face an unprecedented test. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others looked at each other, the shock in their hearts growing stronger. Ever since they came into contact with martial arts, their goal was to become a martial emperor. Now the patriarch suddenly wanted to bring them to the upper realm. This was something they did not dare to think about before. So we are finally going to ascend? Woody was relatively calm. In his opinion, a sect created by the 7 profound sage should not exist in the mortal world. It could only shine on a bigger stage like the upper realm. The Purple King was not too surprised. After all, he came down from the upper realm and was not unfamiliar with the upper realm. The only thing he was worried about was that if the dragon race found out about this, it would be troublesome. Patriarch, he said in a low voice, can I not go? The upper echelons and disciples of the sect must go, Jun Changshao said. What did it mean to ascend with the entire sect? It meant to bring the entire sect to the upper realm, including the chickens, ducks, fish, and geese raised by Lu Wanshi. Sigh. The Purple King sighed and said, I am afraid that if the dragon race finds out about this, it will bring disaster to the sect. In the past, he always believed that he would never become a slave for the beast race and compromise in the sect of all times. Now, he truly regarded the sect as a part of him. Going to the upper realm was also for the safety of the sect, not for his own safety. Z had really changed. He had changed even more than Anyo. Ka. Suddenly, the sound of fingernails rubbing on the table could be heard, causing everyone to have goosebumps. They all turned to look and saw Yi Xingchen, who was sitting in an inconspicuous position, drawing marks on the table with his 10 fingers. His face was ferocious, and his eyes were fierce. Anyo, Jun Changshao said, what happened to you? Patriarch. Yi Xingchen looked up and said, when are we going up? From his tone, it was clear that he could not wait, and was eager to ascend to the upper realm. It was understandable. After all, since his rebirth, Anyo's hatred for Empress Ling Yao had never been extinguished. Instead, it burned even more fiercely. 10 years at the latest, Jun Changshao said. Swoosh. Yi Xingchen stood up and said, I will go and cultivate first. 10 years was not long. He needed to improve his strength faster in this limited time. Of course, Anyo naturally did not think that he would be able to take revenge on Empress Ling Yao immediately after ascending to the upper realm. He did not even doubt that he would be slapped to death by her. However, a higher realm would definitely have a better cultivation environment. This was undoubtedly beneficial to him. Despicable woman, when we are both in the same cultivation environment, I, Yi Xingchen, will surpass you one day. Yi Xingchen roared in his heart. Watching Anyo leave, Jun Changshao thought curiously to himself, who is this guy's enemy in the upper realm? After the incident of the Battle of Dragons and Tigers, Goxing knew a little about Yi Xingchen's secret. However, he did not know that he was the reborn Night Emperor, and even more so that he did not know that his enemy was Ling Yao, who was hailed as the first empress of all time. Since I am going to the upper realm, I will have to ask. In principle, Jun Changxiao rarely asked about his disciples' privacy. However, since Anyo's enemy was in the upper realm, he had to find out more. If Anyo's enemy heard the news and came after him, the situation would be troublesome. Of course, the Purple King stole the dragon egg and offended the dragon clan. Damn it! Jun Changxiao rubbed his temples and said in his heart, Anyo's enemy, Zi's enemy. I haven't even ascended to the upper realm, and I already have 2 enemies in the open. Although Yi Xingqian's enemy was still unknown, it should be a single person. The Purple King had offended an entire clan, especially if they knew that the 5-clawed dragon, which represented the imperial power, had become a lizard-like creature under his kind incubation. Would they not come after him? Ascending to the upper realm, Jun Changxiao held his head and said, It's very dangerous. Chapter 13:19. Speaking of the conflict between the Purple King and the dragon race, one had to talk about the little dragon. When Jun Changxiao was thinking about how to complete the epic mission, it fell into a deep sleep again and showed no signs of waking up until now. Obviously, this was the sign of the 3rd evolution. After the meeting, Jun Changxiao returned to the study and saw the little dragon curled up in its small nest snoring. He muttered to himself, Little guy, will you give me a surprise when you wake up again? As the first contract beast hatched by the incubator, the fire dragon had undergone a total of 2 evolutions, each stronger than the last. Therefore, Go Sheng was looking forward to the 3rd evolution and even more purification in the future. After knowing that the patriarch was going to bring him to the upper realm, the upper echelons of the sect began to actively prepare for ascension that would take at least 10 years. The core disciples also became more diligent in their cultivation, hoping that they would not be a burden to the patriarch. However, every time he thought of going to the upper realm, he would feel unreal. If outsiders knew about this, they would definitely think that Jun Changxiao was crazy. After all, it was extremely difficult for one person to ascend, so how could he bring so many people with him? It was exaggerated. However, the key to ascending with the sect depended on the fortune-seizing array. There was no need to describe the understanding in this aspect. In a word, success or failure depended on the merchant city. A few months later, the falling star continent suddenly became lively, because space warships were approved one after another and flew in as if tearing through space, bringing shock to the locals again and again. God! There are so many powerhouses similar to the 9 great martial emperors. What is going on? At first, the falling star continent cultivators thought that there was a strong enemy invading, but when they saw them coming in and slowly moving in the direction of Yangzhou in the southwest, they realized that they were overthinking. Have you heard? These cultivators from outside want to do business in Ironbone Town in Qingyang County, selling a lot of never-before-seen natural treasures. Not only have I heard of it, I have also been there. The inns in the town are all big shots. Even the people walking on the streets have the cultivation of Wu Huang, or Wu Sheng. As more and more foreign existential plane experts entered the Falling Star continent and Azure Sun County, Ironbone Town became the most dazzling existence. At first, the outsiders were forced to come here to do business because of Jun Changxiao's crazy hints. But when they saw so many cultivators from different planes gathered in this small town, they were instantly overjoyed. Don't underestimate Go Sheng's power. It was no exaggeration to say that Ironbone Town was destined to become the largest trade market in the mortal universe, even though it had just started. It was even bigger than the underground black market in the stronghold. There were many people. It was easy to mess up. This problem could not be seen in Ironbone Town. The warriors who entered this place were all very well behaved. They even lined up to buy breakfast. One of the reasons was that the sect of all times built by Jun Changxiao was right next to it. Another reason was that there were 12 wardens in Ironbone Town, so they would not dare to act recklessly. Jun Changxiao's approach to the so-called trade market was similar to the Starry Sky stronghold. Each stall would charge a fee, but the price would definitely be more favorable. Of course, all trades in Ironbone Town would also increase their prices accordingly. For example, Aunt Wang's Yunlian had the most obvious price increase. In the past it used to be cash or artificial spirit stones. Now, it was directly charged with 9th grade spirit stones. Even so, it was full every day, so they had to continue expanding. Cultivators from different planes poured in. There would be people buying and selling every day. The town began to feel crowded. Jun Changshao ordered, "Qingyang, expand according to the scale of a great sage's imperial city." Yes. Li Qingyang led the construction team to work that day. A few months later, Ironbone Town reached the scale of a super-large city. The construction expert page played a crucial role and was publicly praised by the owner, Jun Patriarch. On Ironbone Peak, Seoul Emperor Du Yinqing looked down at the majestic city below. Looking at the powerful cultivators from different planes, he said sincerely, "The once unknown falling star continent has become famous in the mortal universe under your leadership." "Yes," Emperor Li said excitedly. "In the eyes of others, our falling star continent was unrated. Although we are not strong enough now, we have been recognized by the top planes." The other 7 emperors nodded. A large number of powerful cultivators from different planes sailed into different planes. With Ironbone Town as the trade center, they naturally would not be indifferent, and often came here to take a look. Every time they would be shocked. Jun Changshao said, "I can't make the falling star continent stronger in a short time. I can only find another way to make this place the largest trade center in the mortal universe. I hope to profit from it and slowly strengthen myself." It took 10 years to develop a sect by cheating. It would definitely take more time for the unranked Starfall continent to become a top-tier existential plane. Thus, the only thing Goshen could do was to find an opportunity. The rest would be up to them. Jun Patriarch's actions will definitely go down in history. Seoul Emperor cupped his hands and said. Jun Changshao rolled his sexy eyes and thought, "Is this guy cursing me to die?" "Everyone." He paused and said seriously, "In a few years, Jun has to leave the falling star continent for some matters. Before you ascend, I hope you can protect this place with all your heart." Jun Changshao did not plan to let the 9 great martial emperors join the sect. One more person would be an additional burden. It was better to stay and protect their home. "Please rest assured, Jun Patriarch. We will definitely protect the falling star continent," the 9 great martial emperors said in unison. The falling star continent was home to Gosheng, and it was also home to them. Ironbone Town was a new trade center in the mortal universe. Jun Changshao naturally would not rely on the stall fees to maintain his livelihood. After discussing with second young Master Tang, he officially released the healing pills and body-shaping pills. Instant recovery and physical enhancement. These 2 pills were still heaven-defying in the eyes of cultivators from high-level planes. So after publicity, they quickly sold out on the opening day and caused a huge sensation. The powerful cultivators from other continents were all rich. As long as the pills were sold every day, all kinds of quality spirit stones would definitely flow into the falling star continent. It would go on for a long time. It would be difficult for them not to be powerful. However, Jun Changshao could not wait until that day, because he had to ascend to the higher realm within 10 years. In the cafeteria, Jun Changshao sat down and placed a jar of drunken dreaming on the table. "Do you want to drink from a bowl or from the jar?" Yi Xingchen's mouth twitched. "Patriarch, just say what you want to say. There's no need to get me drunk first." "No," Jun Changshao said. "You have to drink to your heart's content today." "Okay." Yi Xingchen skillfully opened the lid and said, "Drink from a bowl." He was still scared and did not choose to drink from the jar directly because he heard from the alcoholic demon that the patriarch had once drunk him to the point of lying under the table. "Come." Jun Changshao raised his bowl, and the forthright temperament of a Shandong person erupted. "I'll drink." "Do as you please." Gulp gulp. Yi Xingchen also raised his bowl and raised his head to drink. Just as the 2 of them were happily drinking, Su Xiaoma walked out of the canteen and looked at junior brother Yi inside. He transmitted his voice. "Second senior brother. The livestock pen in the backyard has already been set up with a formation. The experts from the Spirit Beast Hall are also waiting solemnly. The sect of all times, which had always been peaceful, would only become heavily guarded when Yi Xingchen was drinking. "Anyo." After drinking a bowl of wine, Jun Changshao finally asked with a serious expression, "Tell me your true identity." Clack. The peanuts between the chopsticks fell onto the table. Yi Xingchen's expression was a little sluggish. After a while, a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said, "This day has finally come." Actually, after experiencing the battle of dragons and tigers, he had a premonition that his secret would be exposed. Who would have thought that the patriarch would only ask him today? "Anyo," Jun Changshao said seriously, "I need to understand your past and grievances, so that I can make the corresponding arrangements after ascending to the higher realm." Swoosh. Yi Xingchen filled his bowl with wine and raised his head to finish it. Under the crazy stimulation of the wine, he held the bowl on the table tightly and finally mustered the courage to say the biggest secret in his heart. "I'm Night Emperor." "Damn." Jun Changshao immediately stood up and said with an exaggerated expression, "So you're the unlucky guy who was killed by his own woman." Chapter 13:20. Fuck. "So you're the unlucky guy who was killed by his own woman." This sentence petrified Yi Xingchen instantly. His heart cracked. The most painful thing in the world was to reveal one's unbearable secret. He thought he could seek comfort, but the listener stabbed him in the back. What kind of person is this? Is it too late to take back what I said earlier? Swoosh. Yi Xingchen refilled his cup and drank it clean. He wanted to get drunk. He wanted to escape. However, he did not know what was wrong today. The wine was still the same, the taste was still the same, but the more he drank, the clearer he became. The more he drank, the more he remembered the past. Drinking to drown one's sorrows made one even more sorrowful. "Ah!" Yi Xingchen yelled, and picked up the jug to drink. He drank it all in one gulp. Only then did he place his hand on the jug with blurry eyes. His spirit and figure were extremely dispirited and depressed. "Yes, I'm one of the 10 great martial emperors, but I died in the hands of my own woman. This is a stain that the world will laugh at forever. This is a scar that can never be erased with time." Just as Yi Xingchen was on the verge of a mental breakdown, Jun Changshao put a hand on his shoulder and comforted him. "The past is the past. Now we have to look forward. Come. We won't go home until we're drunk." Actually, after Jun Changshao found out about Yi Xingchen's true identity, he was not too surprised because many things suddenly became clear. A long time ago, he had speculated about Arnyo's identity with the system, and knew that he had a mysterious heart technique. This corresponded to the Taishan Sutra that Night Emperor had obtained in his past life. When he did not know the truth, he thought it might be complicated. When he found out the truth, he realized that things were actually that simple. Night Emperor died and Anyo lived, a former martial emperor, and now a disciple. As for Yi Xingchen's enemy in the upper realm, Jun Changshao did not need to think to know that it must be Ling Yao, who was known as the first empress in history. Then, another mystery was solved. That year, during the finals of the Dragon-Tiger battle for hegemony, the palm print that pressed down must have been done by that woman. However, there was still a mystery that could not be solved, and that was how Jun Changshao managed to withstand the power of the upper realm. Could it be that, as the system said, he really relied on his face? This would eventually become an unsolved mystery in the history of the Starfall continent. What? Junior brother Yi is Night Emperor, one of the 10 great martial emperors who fell several thousand years ago. Oh my god, this news is explosive. The greatest taboo for the rebirth of a powerhouse was to be known by others. Anyo was not only known by others, but also by the entire sect. It could be said to be one of the most tragic cases in history. Of course, his fellow disciples did not ridicule him, but instead worshipped him. No wonder junior apprentice brother Ye's cultivation rose so quickly. It turns out that a former top powerhouse was reborn. Li Qingyang said in realization. Speaking of the time when they entered the sect, Su Xiaoma and the others were earlier than Yi Xingchen. In the end, Yi Xingchen surpassed them and always occupied the position of the strongest disciple. In the beginning, Li Qingyang thought that the reason why his junior apprentice brother was stronger than him was because of his hard work and cultivation, and because he almost did not care about his life. Now that he thought about it, even if Yi Xingchen fell, he was still a martial emperor in his previous life. Oh my god, Su Xiaoma said in surprise. I actually dared to beat up a martial emperor in the past. When he forced Yi Xingchen to enter the sect, he was ordered by the patriarch to beat him up many times. Now that he thought about it, he was fucking proud. After all, who in the martial disciple realm dared to beat up a former martial emperor? Zhao Daodu, who had been imprisoned with the big shots of various realms, might have expressed his dissatisfaction. To be honest, if it was 2 years ago, and Yi Xingchen revealed his true identity, it might have caused a huge uproar. But now, although the sect knew, they would only be surprised because there were many martial emperors in the confinement pagoda. Moreover, even the current 9 great martial emperors had to worship the patriarch. There were also void-piercing realm powerhouses from various realms coming in and out of Ironbone Town. Their horizons were broadened. They naturally became accustomed to many things. Yi Xingchen dared to reveal his identity because the sect's strength was already extremely strong. Otherwise, he would not have said it even if he was beaten to death. On this day, the livestock pen and spirit beast peak were heavily guarded. However, Yi Xingchen did not make a scene after getting drunk. Instead, he sat on a rock on the main peak until daybreak. His eyes never left the sky, and his mind was much clearer than before. After all these years of rebirth, hatred had always filled his body. He could only vent it on cultivation. After saying it yesterday after getting drunk, even if it was just a sentence, it made him feel unprecedentedly relaxed. It was as if his soul had been completely sublimated. Anyo, Jun Changxiao was squatting on a tree behind him. He plucked a fruit and took a bite. Your enemy is a little tricky. After ascending to the higher realm, you must be calm. Do not do anything rash. After learning about Empress Ling Yao from the 9 martial monarchs, his conclusion was that she was a very scheming woman. Even if she had only ascended a few thousand years ago, and her strength might not be that strong, but if she wanted to take revenge, she had to be careful. I will endure, Yi Xingchen said. During these years of cultivation in the sect of all times, Anyo had changed a lot. Although his arrogant personality was hard to change, his pride had long been smoothed out by reality. Otherwise, he would not have entered the Lingyam Pavilion. After the battle of dragons and tigers, you wanted to leave the sect. Were you worried that Empress Ling Yao would seek revenge? Jun Changxiao asked. That's right. Yi Xingchen was not worried about himself. He was worried that he would implicate the sect of all times. In fact, from then on, he had already regarded himself as a member of the sect. I have always emphasized that I will be a member of the sect of all times for life. Not even a day less, Jun Changxiao said seriously. So if there is trouble, we will face it together. Yi Xingchen fell silent. Jun Changxiao said again. When we reach the higher realm, if my strength allows, I will bring you and your fellow sect members to settle the score with Empress Ling Yao. I will let her know. He paused, his eyes cold. No matter the past, present, or future, no one is allowed to offend the sect of all times. He had made his stand. The sect of all times would take on the hatred of Anyo's past life. Brother Yi. In the distance, Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuiji, and the others shouted, We will always be with you. Yi Xingchen lowered his head and said, Idiot. Although he said that, his heart was extremely warm, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Yes, he died a coward in his past life. But in this life, he was able to meet the patriarch, a fellow sect member who treated him like his own. What was there to be discontent about? I am not alone. I am really not alone. Empress Ling Yao, just you wait. When my sect and I ascend to the higher realm, we will settle the old and new grudges together. Snap. On the opposite side of the mountain, Li Tian found a good angle and pressed the shutter button. A photo with Yi Xingchen as the main focus, and the patriarch and his fellow sect members as support was released. Brother Anyo, Hui who was standing in the female disciple's residence, had tears in her eyes. She already knew about Night Emperor's rebirth, and could finally confirm that this extremely unfamiliar person was no longer her brother Anyo. Sister Hui. Lu Wanshi and Yao Minjing came from behind, wanting to comfort her. I'm fine. Hui wiped away her tears and said with a smile, I've thought it through. He is Yi Xingchen, brother Yi, not my fiancé Peian Yo. Chapter 1321. Yi Xingchen, who had drunk a whole jar of drunken stupor, did not go to Spirit Beast Peak. This was quite surprising. People would eventually change and grow. By revealing his identity, the once proud and aloof Knight Emperor could be considered to have truly taken a brand new step. As for Anyo, he would still use it in the future, but it was just a name. There was no other meaning to it. Weir had also thought it through. From now on, she focused on martial arts cultivation, and in her heart, she still loved her late fiancé. This can be considered a perfect ending, Jun Changshao murmured. He and his disciples had tried their best to matchmake Yi Xingchen and Hui. Now that the truth was out, they realized that the two of them belonged to two different worlds. Empress Lingyao. Jun Changshao stroked his chin. She's also a strong opponent. We must be careful after ascending. Little brother. The white Rakshasa took a sip of tea. This woman is not simple. Oh. Jun Changshao asked. Big brother, have you heard of her? The black Rakshasa said. The person in charge of the planar battlefield this time is Empress Lingyao. To be entrusted with such an important task by the Realm Hall, she must be very capable. Person in charge? She's in charge of all matters in the planar battlefield. Fuck. Jun Changshao's eyes flashed with anger. Since that woman was in charge of the planar battlefield, the punishment he had suffered earlier must have something to do with her. In that case, not only did she have a grudge against Yi Xingchen, but she also had a grudge against him. The first empress of all time. Jun Changshao sneered in his heart. The day I ascend to the higher realm will be the day your doomsday begins. This was a thorough arrangement. Big brother. Jun Changshao asked. This Empress Lingyao, how strong is she now? The white Rakshasa hesitated for a moment. We've only heard of her. We've never seen her in person, so we don't know how strong she is. Little brother. The black Rakshasa, on the other hand, said, although the upper realm also pays attention to one's realm and strength, it's actually more important. He paused and said, connections. Big brother. Are you saying that Empress Lingyao has a wide network of connections? Jun Changshao asked. The black Rakshasa said, the World Hall is the most sacred organization in the upper realm. Not just anyone can enter it, and not just anyone will be entrusted with the important task of supervising the planar battlefield. Jun Changshao understood. The strength of this Empress Lingyao was not important. What was important was that she had connections and connections. In other words, the Purple King's enemy was the entire dragon race, while Yi Xingchen's enemy was likely to involve many seemingly unrelated factions. Of course, the black Rakshasa said, little brother, your connections aren't weak either. Just your identity as Jimren Tonggu's personal disciple is enough for you to do as you please in the upper realm. Jun Changshao's mouth twitched slightly. I also hope that I can do whatever I want in the upper realm, but the point is, it has nothing to do with Jimren Tonggu. No, Jun Changshao said to himself. Even if it has nothing to do with me, I'll have to find connections. When I go to the upper realm, I'll first meet Jimren Tonggu and get myself an awesome identity. Heaven knew if this was the case in the higher realms of the universe. Middle-level void-piercing realm cultivators were as common as dogs, and upper-level void-piercing realm cultivators were everywhere. Since he was new here, he had to first develop himself. Big brothers, Jun Changshao said weakly. Is this master of mine powerful in the upper realm? Very powerful, the black Rakshasa said with a look of admiration. Whether it's strength, identity, or status, he's definitely above the World Hall. At this time, if Jimren Tonggu himself was standing next to Go Sheng, he would definitely go through the apprenticeship process. After all, his thigh was thick enough, and his leg hair was thick enough. It would be super comfortable hanging on it. Big brothers, can you tell me more about the upper realm? Jun Changshao remembered that every time a new map was opened, the first few rounds of the game were all Who am I? Where am I? Who's beating me? This time he was going to the upper realm. He definitely needed to understand it in advance. Even if he couldn't go in and fight, at least he couldn't turn into a box as soon as he landed. The black and white Rakshasa began to popularize the upper realm. There weren't many spoilers in terms of content. In the future, there would be introductions in the main text, gradually unveiling the layers of mystery of the new world. Patriarch. After a few days of careful consideration, Yi Xingchen still came to the study. What's the matter? Jun Changshao asked. After a moment of silence, Yi Xingchen said, I've cultivated the Taishan Bible. That's why I'm ahead of senior brother Li and the others. I know. Not to mention hearing it from the Nine Heavens Martial Emperor, just taking Lu Qianqian to the Taishan cave abode and seeing. Oh, right. Jun Changshao said. As a member of the sect of all times, you must have manners. In the future, when you visit scenic spots and historical sites, don't just throw rubbish and carve random things. Yi Xingchen was stunned. Was he saying that when he went to the Taishan cave abode and obtained the Taishan Sutra, he got carried away and casually carved the words Night Emperor was here on the wall? Patriarch. You've been to the Taishan cave abode too? Jun Changshao said. Not only have I been there, I've also erased the words you carved on the wall. Bullshit. The system roared. You only erased one word then added another. The Taishan cave abode is full of danger. Patriarch, you must have spent a lot of time there, right? Yi Xingchen still had lingering fears when he recalled the scene before he entered that year. It was all right, Jun Changshao said. It took about 2 hours to go back and forth. 2 hours? Yi Xingchen suddenly opened his mouth, the dignity in the depths of his heart falling away bit by bit. Jun Changshao didn't know that his casual words would shatter his disciple's dignity to the ground. He returned to the topic at hand and said, Why did you mention the Taishan Sutra for no reason? Yi Xingchen adjusted himself from his state of sorrow and said solemnly, I'm indebted to Patriarch for all these years. I'm willing to share this Heart Sutra with my fellow disciples. Holy shit. Night Emperor changed greatly. He actually took the initiative to hand over the Heart Sutra to the sect. Jun Changshao was also a little surprised, but a smile quickly appeared on his face. He walked in front of him and patted his shoulder, saying, I'm very pleased that you have such intentions. But, he paused and said, everyone has their own unique opportunities. The Taishan Sutra is yours, so it's yours. There's no need to share it with your fellow disciples. Yi Xingchen was a little embarrassed. He had seriously considered it for a few days, before finally making the difficult decision to share the Heart Sutra. Since the Patriarch didn't want it, it was really for the best. Of course. At this moment Jun Changshao added, although the Taishan Sutra is good, it can't be compared to the Heart Sutra of the sect. Crack. Listen, it was the sound of a heart breaking. Listen, it was the sound of Anyo's dignity being shattered. Jun Changshao's words once again dealt a deep blow to Yi Xingchen's heart. But in fact, strictly speaking, it was really the case. After all, with the Taishan Sutra, he didn't see the other party's realm being much higher than Li Qingyang's. This thing was similar to the Taishan Ice Heart Sutra. It was a dispensable existence. If one had the time, it would be better to cultivate the 5 elements heavenly reflection technique, or other heart sutras. The system complained. The Taishan old man wants to beat someone up. Chapter 1322. Taishuan's 2 above divine mantras were not suitable for the disciples of the sect of all times at the moment, because they had been cultivating the 5 elements, heavenly reflection mantra, since the beginning. Therefore, Jun Changshao would not consider popularizing Yi Xingchen's mantra manuals. After all, mantra manuals did not matter how much one cultivated, but whether one was proficient in them. Jun Changshao was quite pleased that this proud man, who had once disagreed with the sect, had taken the initiative to offer his own martial arts. Oh right. Before Yi Xingchen left, Jun Changshao asked, "Do you remember the heaven and earth creation formation recorded in the Taishan Sutra?" It did not matter whether he learned the manual or not, but it would be best if he could find the formation. There is a formation recorded in it, Yi Xingchen said. But I did not remember it. After he obtained the Taishan Sutra, he had only memorized the mantra and briefly flipped through it. He had been tricked before he could cultivate it. Fine. Without the formation diagram of the other manual, Jun Changshao could only continue to focus on the second half of the Taishan Ice Heart mantra and study it without sleep or food. The disciples of the sect cultivated as usual, and Ironbone Town became more and more lively. However, none of this had anything to do with him. He truly did not care about the outside world, and only focused on studying. As for the mortal universe, the news about the falling star continent and the patriarch of the sect of all times was fermenting and spreading. The major planes gradually learned about it and realized that this was a super powerful person who had replaced the starry sky fortress. They could not afford to offend him. Little cold village. The children fought to stand outside the walls and tiptoed to look into the courtyard. At this moment, the entire village was protected by the experts of the Extreme Coldness Palace and other sections. In the simple courtyard, Li Qingyang looked at his beloved woman affectionately and said, "I'm here to pick you up today." Qingyang, Sister Qiao, was picked up as soon as she opened her mouth. "No matter what the reason is, you have to come with me today." Li Qingyang looked like a domineering CEO. Su Xiaoma, who was standing outside the village, had a gratified expression on his face. He thought to himself, second senior brother was too old-fashioned in the past. He could have just taken away the woman he liked. Obviously, for the steady Li Qingyang to be able to do such a thing, he must have been instructed by him. Su Gosheng, if you have time, teach your Jun Gosheng. Swish. Under the gazes of the villagers, Li Qingyang hugged the woman he loved deeply and turned into a stream of light, flying into the endless sky. He's flying. Sister Qiao is flying. The children opened their eyes wide and shouted, "Who?" The palace master of the Extreme Coldness Palace let out a long sigh of relief and said, "Our mission can be considered completed. There's no need to send a large number of soldiers to guard the place every day. Thank you for your hard work." Su Xiaoma walked over and handed over an interspatial ring. "Here are 100 healing pills and 100 body-shaping pills." Jun Changshao was worried that something might happen to Sister Qiao, or because she was in Lu Prefecture in the northeast. Hence, he had asked the major sects to protect her 24/7. Now that she was gone, he would definitely give her some benefits. After all, he could not lose his way. "Thank you." The palace master and the others received the items and were overjoyed. Recently, the experts from various realms had entered the falling star continent on flying warships. The prices of healing pills and body-shaping pills had soared. Jun Patriarch gave them so many. He was simply too generous. Qingyang City. Li Qingyang hugged Sister Qiao, and flew over. He landed in front of the Li clan's courtyard and said seriously, "Father, I want to be engaged to Qiao. I want the whole continent to know." The Li clan master, who was sitting in the study, sighed and said, "You have grown up. You have the right to decide anything." In the past, he did not agree to this marriage. Now that his son was a half-saint and the second disciple of the strongest sect in the falling star continent, he could naturally decide his future. "Thank you, father." Li Qingyang looked at the shy Qiao, in his arms and said affectionately, "I will fulfill my promise back then and tell the whole world that only I, Li Qingyang, am worthy of you. You are not worthy of Li Qingyang." This was a man's responsibility. Scumbag Gosheng, come out and take a beating. The next day, the news about the engagement of the second disciple of the sect of all times spread throughout the falling star continent. All the major clans, factions, and organizations received the invitations. Patriarch. One of the upper echelons broke down. The sect of all times has at least 100,000 disciples. Everyone's engagement has to be grand. If we just follow along, we will probably go bankrupt. The patriarch wanted to cry but had no tears. What else can we do? The invitations have already been sent. If we don't go, we will definitely be criticized. The only thing that comforted the major factions was that those who received the invitations could use the teleportation array for free. Hence, they did not have to travel long distances. They only had to bring gifts. Not all the major clans and factions were sad after receiving the invitations from the Sect of all times. For example, Huyang City's AI clan and Sun City's Song clan were happy and proud. One of them had a long-term relationship with Jun Changshao, while the other was a disciple of the sect. To be sent an invitation was definitely a great honor. Many years later, when these clans took out the invitations that they had kept for a long time, they would naturally brag about it and attract the envy of others. However, the most miserable clan was Liang City's Xiao clan. This clan had fallen from a first-rate clan to a second-rate or third-rate clan in Azure Sun County in just 10 years. They were even on the verge of falling into disrepute. The reason for all this was that their businesses were sanctioned, and they were mocked by others all year round. Some people would ask who had poisoned Xiao Ziji's body. Actually, there was no need to investigate further, because the Xiao clan's first elder had suddenly died a few years ago and completely disappeared. 3 days later, Li Qingyang and Sister Qiao completed the engagement ceremony on the Eternal Sect's main peak's martial arts practice field, witnessed by the elders of various sects and clans from all over the world, as well as the cultivators from various cities. At the banquet at night, Yi Xingchen placed a few jars of drunken dreams on the table and raised his eyebrows at Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others. He said proudly, "No one is allowed to leave. Let's fight until dawn." "Afraid of you?" Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others rolled up their sleeves. When the banquet ended, they were all put under the table. Only Anyo sat calmly and drank another bowl of wine. He said disdainfully, "A bunch of trash." Although Jun Changshao was in charge of Li Qingyang's engagement ceremony, he only showed his face during the ceremony. He spent all his time studying the fortune array. A year later, a mountain in a certain county suddenly collapsed. A stream of light broke out of the ground and entered the body of a young man. Before he could start to deceive, he was mercilessly smacked in the face by the flat mouth. He was sucked into the vacuum cleaner before he could struggle. Caught another one. Jiangye threw the vacuum cleaner into the space ring and continued to release his essence spirit. Then he locked onto a certain area and said to himself, "Let's not wait for them to wake up. Let's just drag them out directly." The 8th Hall Master and the 9th Hall Master of the Soul Clan were mercilessly dealt with without even showing their faces. At this point, the 9 Soul Clan experts who had harmed the Falling Star continent back then had all experienced the function of the magically modified vacuum cleaner. They were thrown into the Tianyuan Prism Pagoda and trained by area. 2 years later, due to the existence of Ironbone Town, the Azure Sun County's economy developed rapidly. Under the new rating, it became the strongest county in the Falling Star continent. The strength of the Southwest Yangzhou also rose. 3 years later, the super teleportation network that the Sect of all times had invested in and built was fully opened in the Falling Star continent. It could be said that it covered the entire continent and could teleport anywhere. It could even be said to be a great project that would benefit the future generations. 4 years later, 5 years later, no matter how much time passed, Jun Changshao had always been studying the fortune array. He rarely appeared in the sect, let alone in the outside world. Creak. 9 years after the new main mission appeared, the stone door that was covered in cobwebs finally opened. Jun Changshao walked out from inside. Under the reflection of the sun, his head was shining brightly. Studying the array consumed a lot of brain power. Therefore, Gosheng had really gone bald all these years. Chapter 1323. Over the years, Jun Changshao had gone further and further on the path of cheating. Only when researching the fortune of heaven and earth formation did he rely purely on his own efforts and willpower. He even made himself bald. He was bald. The formation had also been researched. However, Jun Changshao was not sure if the formation of the fortune of heaven and earth formation could allow the sect to ascend. "Don't worry," the system said. "The host still has a lot of contribution points. If you really can't do it, you can just go to the store. Anyway, you're used to cheating, no one will say anything." Scram. Jun Changshao was not reluctant to spend money, but if he could rely on the fortune of heaven and earth formation to ascend, he would undoubtedly save a lot of contribution points, and at least have some confidence in entering the upper realm. To put it bluntly, he was afraid of being bullied in the new world. Start the formation. Jun Changshao flew up and suspended in midair. With a wave of his hands, thousands of light spots poured out and were placed around the sect, presenting formation flags. This technique is amazing. Zhen Dejuan was amazed. It was as if the formation was placed casually and freely. It was enough to show that the patriarch's understanding of formations had reached the peak of perfection in these few years of seclusion. Of course, even the ancient formation emperors would be overshadowed in front of Jun Changshao. Whoosh! Whoosh! Light and shadow diffused and poured in midair. Lines gathered between the formation flags, and then began to connect with each other. In Jun Changshao's sea of consciousness, the layout and lines of the fortune of heaven and earth formation appeared crazily, and his entire person entered an extremely high realm of formation. 2 days later, when the last line was connected to the formation flags, the entire formation was instantly completed. First, it exploded with light. Then it gathered from all directions to form a light barrier that was almost solid. What's this? The disciples who were shrouded in the barrier began to guess. Could it be a brand new sect protecting formation? Phew. Jun Changshao landed on the main peak and wiped the sweat from his forehead. His face was slightly haggard. This is so fucking tiring. The fortune of heaven and earth formation was set up. In terms of scale, it was larger than the one set up by Empress Ling Yao, because it covered the entire Ironbone Mountain. However, it was very difficult to set it up. After resting for half a day, Jun Changshao began communicating with the 5 elements in his body. Next, 5 streams of light of different colors flew out and fused into the magic array, filling up the grooves that he had prepared beforehand. The great array of fortune of heaven and earth was like a platform. Once it was set up and stabilized, it would depend on the strength of the 5 elements. Swish! The formation that enveloped the sect gradually weakened and then disappeared. Jun Changshao did not initiate the ascension process right away because he still had to deal with the aftermath before leaving. For example, who would be in charge of the falling star continent after the entire sect ascended? Who would be the chief of Martial League? There was also the Heaven Origin Soul Suppressing Pagoda. This item was to be brought to the upper realm, but the prisoners and the 12 wardens inside had to be properly settled. Boom! Boom! After a night, the mountain peaks near Ironbone Mountain gradually rose. Li Qingyang received the order and led the construction team to start construction on the mountain. Half a month later, a rather large building complex was built. According to Jun Changshao's plan, this would be the Martial League's headquarters. The 12 wardens would be in charge of all daily affairs. The 9 underground floors under the mountain would be used to hold all kinds of prisoners, and layers of high-level formations would be set up. With the ZZ and the others in charge of the falling star continent, no one would dare to cause trouble. Many planes were even praying that they would not be targeted by the eternal punishment order. The safety of his home had been well settled. Next, Jun Changshao began to consider whether he should bring anyone other than the sect with him. Patriarch, Jiangye said, "My sister wants to accompany Aunt Wang to run the inn." Jun Changshao said, "Then I won't force you." Patriarch, Li Qingyang said bitterly. Xiao'er said she's just an ordinary person and is willing to stay in the falling star continent. Okay. Ascending to the upper realm was not a vacation. If these relatives of his disciples were willing to stay in the mortal universe, Jun Changshao would not force them. After all, who knew if they would die in the upper realm? Li Qingyang and Jiangye were a little depressed. Once they went to the upper realm, it would be difficult to come down. Wouldn't they be separated from their relatives forever? Jun Changshao seemed to see through them. He comforted them, "Don't worry. As long as you can go up, you can come down. Aren't the black and white guardians a good example?" Right. Li Qingyang and Jiangye were suddenly enlightened. Ascending to the upper realm was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. But coming down from there was still a possibility. The Purple King, He Wudi, and the Black and White Double Devils were classic examples. However, their cultivations were suppressed and could not reach their peak. Patriarch Su Xiaomo walked over excitedly and said, Shuiyin has agreed to go. Li Qingyang's fiancé and Jiang Ye's sister were ordinary people. Xia Shuiyin had been in contact with martial arts since she was young. Naturally, she would not reject. Moreover, she could accompany her fiancé. Damn! Li Fei and Tian Qi muttered in their hearts. This guy is not satisfied with showing off his affection in the mortal realm. He wants to go to the upper realm to force it on us. Thud. In the region of the burning volcano, Yi Xingchen walked over proudly. Not only did he emit a strong smell of alcohol, but he also exuded a strong fighting spirit. In the 9 years under the shrinking technique, he had always been diligent in his cultivation. He had not relaxed at all. Now, he had stepped into the Wusheng from the half-step of Wusheng and reached the 5th stage. Rumble. Suddenly, the ground shook and quickly cracked open. Roar. Lava spewed out from the cracks. Then, a huge creature covered in flames appeared and let out a deafening roar. This was the Flame Saint Beast, which was comparable to the Martial Emperor. When Yi Xingchen entered the Life and Death secret realm for the first time, he decisively chose the Hell mode. However, he was instantly killed by this beast. The Night Emperor could not be humiliated. Therefore, when he was about to ascend to the upper realm, he chose the Hell mode again. It was not to show off, but to regain his lost dignity. Roar. The Flame Saint Beast let out another roar. Flames appeared in the sky, and mercilessly pressed down on the arrogant human in front of it. Ta! Yi Xingchen took a step forward and said coldly, Trash! Boom! 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 In the Life and Death secret realm under the Hell mode, the violent energy crazily exploded and shook the illusionary realm violently. When everything calmed down, Yi Xingchen sat proudly on a huge rock. His 10 fingers were clasped together. Behind him, the Flame Saint Beast, which was comparable to the Martial Emperor, had been blasted into pieces. He had finally regained his lost dignity today. Junior brother Yi, we can go out now. Xiao Ziji took back his shield and said. Okay. Yi Xingchen got up and left. However, Xiao Ziji was not the only one who left the secret realm. Lu Qianqian, Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others were also there. After all the fuss, it turned out that the core disciples had formed a team to fight the dungeon of the highest difficulty. Otherwise, after settling the family affairs of the disciples, Jun Changshao began to visit his old friends one by one, such as the AI clan leader, City Lord Xia, Mu Changhong, the Certification Hall, and the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Of course, he would not say that he was going to ascend with the sect. Instead, he said that he had something to do, and that he had to take the disciples away for a while. Jun Patriarch is a man of great things. I can only wish you a safe journey, City Lord Han said as he walked Yi Xingchen to the door. Goodbye. Jun Changshao left, and then went to other states to visit his old friends. He even went to the Demon Emperor's gate and said, When Jun is not here, your sect must be honest. 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 The master of the Demon Emperor's gate said, We will be honest. Ever since the establishment of the Martial Alliance, he had given up on the idea of reviving the demon sect. After all, Jun Changshao was now like an unreachable mountain in front of him. Goodbye. After visiting the Demon Emperor's gate, Jun Changshao took the superpowered teleportation matrix and stopped at the foot of the Miaohua Palace. When is Jun Patriarch leaving? Shi Jingshuan's eyes flashed with sadness. Knowing that he was here to visit, he did not even close his door. Instead, he told her that he was going on a long journey and might not be back for a long time. About 2 or 3 months. Oh. Shi Jingxian responded and tried to smile. Can I see Jun Patriarch off? Jun Changshao said awkwardly. Actually, my purpose of this visit is that if Palace Lord Shi wants to go, you can come with me. This, Shi Jingxian hesitated. Jun Changshao said. The place I'm going to might be able to permanently cure your eye disease, Palace Lord Shi. You won't have to wear glasses anymore. I still have to manage the sect. Palace Lord, Zhang Sun Fanghua hurriedly said. We'll manage the sect on your behalf. You can follow Jun Patriarch and see the world. Both she and Leng Xingyue knew that the palace lord was concerned about Jun Changxiao. Since he invited her to go on a long journey, she would definitely agree. Jun Patriarch. Shi Jingxian was silent for a while, then said, I'll think about it. All right. Jun Changxiao stood up and cupped his hands. If palace lord she wants to go, you can come to the sect of all times anytime within the next 2 months. Jun will take his leave first. After leaving the Miaohua palace, he returned to the sect. Right. Jun Changxiao slapped his forehead and said to himself, there are still many old friends on the battlefield. I should say goodbye to them before I leave. The system said, are you sure you're going to visit your old friends? Chapter 1324. Jun Changxiao once said that he wouldn't come to the dimensional battlefield again, but he failed to keep his promise. He used the portal to come to the Starfall continent again. During these 9 years of studying the fortune of heaven and earth formation, he rarely went out, as if he was isolated from the world. But every time he was tired, he would think of someone. For more than 3,000 days, Jun Changxiao's biggest gain wasn't the formation, but learning to calm down and think seriously. So, after coming out of seclusion, he would ask his disciple if he wanted to bring his family with him. Running away is not a solution. The system said, the host still has to face what he has to face. Even if the ending is not perfect, at least bear it like a man. Over these years, it understood Jun Changxiao better than anyone else. It was only a pity that it wasn't a female system. Otherwise, there would be many people calling for a couple. So, I still came to the dimensional battlefield. You finally admit it? 9 years of thinking about you weren't in vain. The system said. Jun Changxiao ignored it and looked at the peach tree that was obviously more prosperous than 9 years ago. A breeze blew, and the peach blossoms fell. The stronghold was still the same as before, and the scenery was still the same. Unfortunately, the beauty waiting under the tree was no longer there. I said I wouldn't come again. How could she keep waiting? Jun Changxiao muttered to himself. Phew. Jun Changxiao took a deep breath and flew out, following the broken spatial barrier. He wanted to go to the Lingyuan continent to say goodbye to his golden partner Kujin Nan. However, just as he flew out, his whole body froze in midair. There was a blue stone outside the stronghold, and a beautiful woman was sitting on it. She supported her face with one hand and smiled. Why are you here again? Who? Rose Queen. Jun Changxiao was surprised. Why are you here? You said I couldn't wait for you in the stronghold, so I could only wait outside. Rose Queen grumbled. That's right. The system said, the host said that. I can testify. Jun Changxiao was speechless. You didn't wait outside for 9 years, did you? I waited for 3,651 days. Rose Queen said. There were whole numbers and zeros, making it convincing. Jun Changxiao covered his forehead and said, are you stupid? If I'm not stupid, why would I like you? Rose Queen said bitterly. The Spiritas continent was developing every day, but it was still far from meeting the requirements to leave, so she would come here every day when she had nothing to do. What are you waiting for? The system roared in his ear. If you're a man, go and hug your wife in your arms. Sigh. For Gosheng. It wanted nothing more than to transform itself into the strongest moon elder system. Jun Changxiao smiled bitterly. Actually, I know. Rose Queen interrupted him and said, because of the enmity between the two planes, it's impossible for us to be together. However, this is your own business. You can't influence my heart. I, Rose of Flowers, don't have as many complicated thoughts as you humans. Liking someone is liking someone. Do I have to play along and dislike you just because you don't like me? Jun Changxiao was silent. The system said she's right. Right my ass. Jun Changxiao, who was already irritated, roared in his heart. Can you shut up? Of course. Rose Queen stood up and looked straight at him. I'm not the kind of woman who pesters you. If you really hate me then. She took out a piece of paper and said, I can divorce you right now. From now on, you and I will have nothing to do with each other. It's here, it's here. A classic fantasy marriage annulment scene. You've even written the divorce letter. Jun Changshao spread his hands and said, "Looks like you've been prepared." "Nonsense." Rose Queen glared at him and said angrily, "I've had enough of waiting for a stinky man every day." It was obvious that there were tears at the corners of her eyes. Although she tried her best to appear angry, she could not hide the pain in her eyes. The ruler of the Spiritas continent, the noble queen who meant what she said, had waited foolishly for many years because of a man. This made her often ask herself if it was worth it. Doryman, scumbag, not worth it. Jing Jixiao, scumbag he tue. Jun Changshao. Rose Queen held a divorce letter and said coldly, "I'll ask you one more time. Will you accept me or not?" Her meaning was clear. "If you don't agree, I'll divorce you right now." "Big sister," Jun Changshao said with a broken face, "our ages don't match. It'll be a tragedy if we force ourselves to be together. In a world where lifespans can easily reach thousands of years, is there any point in talking about age?" "No point," the system said. "Maybe the host's father is the emperor of the upper realm, and his mother is the empress of the upper realm. One can summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand, and the other can be worshipped by all the people in the world. What if his actual age is already tens of thousands of years?" Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "I still have a lot of things to do. I don't have the heart to be in love." "So you still choose to break up?" "We're just acting. We're not really married. What's there to break up?" "I understand." Rose Queen bit her finger and said hatefully, "From today onwards, I, Rose of Flowers, and you, Jun Changshao, have nothing to do with each other." If Go Sheng was compared to a jungler, then she was a support. Now she was going to break off all ties with him. Swish! Her blood-stained finger pressed on the divorce letter with her name written on it. However, at the moment of contact, a force erupted, and the divorce letter instantly fell into Jun Changshao's hands. He crumpled the letter into a ball and burned it with flames. He said, "A woman divorcing a man. It's embarrassing." "You. There's more," Jun Changshao shouted. "What I wanted to say at the beginning was that I'm actually going to sneak into the upper realm soon. Don't you want to make the Soul continent stronger? You can come with me. As long as your realm becomes stronger, you can get any resources in the world." He spoke very quickly, without taking a breath at all. "Sneak into the upper realm?" Rose Queen was stunned. Jun Changshao said, "I'm going to say goodbye to an old friend. You can think about it." "I've already thought about it." Rose Queen said, "I'll go with you." Although she was a little confused about the current situation, since he came to ask her, she would definitely not object. "The upper realm is not like the lower realm," Jun Changshao said indifferently. "If you go, you may not be able to come back. You may even experience death. You have to think carefully. The upper realm is a place that countless creatures in the mortal universe dream of. If you have a way to sneak in, I'll go even if it's a mountain of swords and a sea of fire," Rose Queen said seriously. This sentence was partly because of emotional factors, and partly because of the lifelong pursuit of the strong. Not to mention Rose Queen, even the 9 great martial emperors who had failed to sneak in would definitely choose to take a gamble again, because it was relatively safer to sneak in than to risk breaking the void. "Wait for me here," Jun Changshao said. "I'll go say goodbye to City Lord Ku." "Oh." Rose Queen nodded in response. After watching him leave, sweetness rose in her heart. She said, "He deliberately took the divorce letter because he has me in his heart." Chapter 1325. In the interdimensional battlefield, only the Lingyuan continent could be considered as Jun Changxiao's close old partner. Hence, he came here mainly to bid farewell to Kuji Nan. "Jun Patriarch, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to do something big. Then this Ku will wish Sect Master Jun all the best in advance, and hope that everything goes as you wish." If Ku Jinnan knew that the big thing Jun Changshao was talking about was to smuggle his disciples into the upper realm, it would have taken a lot of courage to say that. "Goodbye, City Lord Ku. Jun Patriarch, take care." The 2 perfect partners parted ways just like that. No one knew if they would have the chance to act together in the future. Jun Changshao then visited other planes before returning to his stronghold on the Starfall continent. Queen Rose was still sitting on the Bluestone, but she had already arranged the affairs of the race with her special ability. After becoming the new queen, she had been fighting outside all year round, so it had become a habit for her to take care of the daily affairs of the plains. Are you sure you want to come with me? Jun Changshao asked again. I'm sure, Queen Rose said seriously. Then let's go, Jun Changshao said. Queen Rose's eyes were filled with surprise, because he reached out his hand when he spoke. Did that mean, the system said in surprise. 9 years of seclusion really enlightened him. He actually took the initiative to hold her hand today. Or did he sneakily buy a bottle of EQ while he was upgrading and updating? No. For a person like the host, he would need at least 999 bottles of EQ to reach the lowest value of EQ. Don't misunderstand. Jun Changshao turned his face and said, the entrance to the Falling Star continent must be led by me. Oh. Queen Rose raised her hand generously, but as soon as she touched it, she was dragged along, and she seemed to be stumbling. The system was speechless. This is a straight man's iron hand holding. Wait, it was puzzled. Outsiders have to be led by the host to enter and exit the portal? When was this new setting added? Get lost. In the past decade or so, the Purple King had changed, Yi Xingqian had changed, and even the patriarch Jun Changshao had changed, especially when he was in seclusion to research array formations. His mentality had changed even more. Today they had taken a small step together. Perhaps tomorrow, they would take a big step forward. Listen to me when you go to the upper realm. Yes, husband. Don't run around when you're in the upper realm. Yes, husband. Call me patriarch. Yes, husband. Jun Changshao angrily pulled Rose of Flowers' hand into the portal. At this point, the Rose Queen would also become a thing of the past, because when she chose to go with him, it meant that she had temporarily given up all her identity and status. The Sect of all times exploded because the patriarch went to the dimensional battlefield and actually brought back the patriarch's wife. The disciples had long known that the patriarch was married, and it was in the dimensional battlefield. It was just that many had not seen it. So when Rose of Flowers first came to the sect, it definitely caused a huge commotion. Here came the problem. Who was the one who spread the news? For reference, Yi Xingqian fought a large group of prisoners alone for the first time, and he was carried back by Zhao Daodu. Su Xiaoma happened to see it, and the next day, the whole sect knew about it. Oh my god! Yao Minjing's eyes widened in shock. The big sister that the patriarch brought back is so beautiful and elegant. Girl, Lu Wanshur said seriously. You can't call her big sister, you have to call her the patriarch's wife. Oh. Yao Minjing hurriedly nodded. Because of Rose of Flowers' arrival, the disciples had no time to cultivate, and they all gathered in a group to look at the main hall and discuss in private. Second senior brother, I keep feeling that calling her the patriarch's wife is a bit awkward. Then call her master's wife. Patriarch and disciple were equivalent to master and disciple, so it was reasonable for Li Qingyang and Su Xiaoma to call the patriarch's wife. Inside the main hall, Rose of Flowers glanced at the entry form on the table and smiled. Is this why you burned the letter of divorce? Jun Changshao, who was sitting at the head of the table, clasped his fingers together and said seriously, only by becoming a member of the Sect of all times can you follow me to the dimensional battlefield. Okay. Rose of Flowers said, I agree. She was the empress of the soul race. Although she controlled the entire plane, she did not belong to any sect, so she did not have any objections to joining a sect. Moreover, her man was the master here. Ding! Sect members, 110001. Ding! Sect contribution points, 210001. When Rose of Flowers entered the Sect of all times according to the procedures, another powerhouse was welcomed, whose strength was only inferior to the lower void-piercing realm. Jun Changshao thought to himself, there's no upper limit in terms of members. If I keep recruiting disciples, won't I be able to earn unlimited contribution points? Host's idea is good, but don't forget, one more disciple means one more set of martial arts resources. Unless you recruit them to raise them, don't daydream, the system said. The cold water poured over Jun Changxiao's heart, making him feel cold. Indeed, one more member of the sect was equivalent to one more burden. If they were worth nurturing, it would be worth recruiting, otherwise, it would definitely be a loss. Sigh. Jun Changxiao sighed. Patriarch. Li Qingyang walked over and said, Master's wife's residence has been arranged. It happens to be right next to your courtyard. The corner of Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched slightly. I clearly hinted to him to arrange for that woman to stay at Dragon Spine Peak, where the higher-ups lived. Why did he arrange for her to stay at Dragon Head Peak in the end? The system said. After all the disciples in the sect know that she's the patriarch's wife. If she doesn't stay with you, the patriarch, it'll be easy for others to gossip. So I think there's no problem with the second disciple's arrangement. I don't care what you think, I want what I think. Forget it. It didn't matter where she stayed. It was better to quickly prepare for ascension. After settling everything, Rose of Flowers began to tour the sect of all times. Especially when she saw a disciple with an extraordinary reputation, she said in surprise, Husband's sect is very strong. No wonder it's feared by all the major dimensions. In the following few days, she learned more about the sect, which made her more and more shocked. She even began to suspect that all the core forces of her own dimension might not be as strong as the sect of all times. This is unbelievable. How did husband do it? Rose of Flowers was completely shocked by the strength of the sect of all times. When she learned about the history of the sect from Li Qingyang and the other disciples, she finally understood that strength came from the foundation. Yes, the foundation of cheating. Good morning, mistress. Good morning, mistress. The disciples of the sect of all times were very well behaved. Every time they met the patriarch's wife, they would bow respectfully. Half a month later, Wonder Flower Palace sent a handwritten letter from Shi Jingxian. After reading it, Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, I still choose to stay in the Falling Star continent. I'm sorry, Shi Jingxian, who was in the sect, said apologetically. My strength is limited. I can't follow Jun Patriarch everywhere. When Jun Changxiao invited her to go out with him, she was very happy. However, after calming down and thinking about it, she still chose to reject, because she really didn't want him to be a burden. Jun Patriarch, Shi Jingxian said with a determined gaze, I will work hard to cultivate. I hope that one day I can fight side by side with you. Another half a month passed. Jun Changxiao thought that the time was right. Taking advantage of the dark and windy day, he stood in the center of the entire fortune-stealing formation. Hum. A stream of light that was hidden in the dark soared into the sky, enveloping the entire Iron Bone Mountain. Is it coming? Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others raised their heads, their eyes shining with passion, anticipation, and nervousness. The upper realm. An unfamiliar place. No one knew what kind of hardships they would experience after entering. They were not afraid because whether it was a mountain of blades, a sea of fire, or a bottomless abyss, they would walk with the patriarch unswervingly. It's about time. Jun Changxiao looked up at the full moon and smiled evilly. Upper realm, I'm coming. Prajna Permitha. Whoosh in an instant. The falling star continent that had fallen into darkness was dyed as bright as day by a strong light. The martial artists who were not asleep came out one after another, and looked in shock at the light that shot into the sky in the direction of Yangzhou, in Qingyang County in the southwest. City Lord Xia walked out of his bedroom, wearing the Hello Kitty pajamas that Jun Changxiao had given him. When he saw the natural phenomenon, his eyes widened and he exclaimed, What's going on? The light is coming from the sect of all times. What's going on? The major families and martial artists closest to the Iron Bone Mountain were all dumbfounded. Especially when the aura that contained the supreme mystery spread over. They all had the urge to worship it. Could it be? City Lord Han exclaimed. Jun Patriarch broke through the void. Judging from the natural phenomenon, it was indeed a scene of breaking through the void and ascending to the upper realm. However, it was illegal. Oh my God! The disciples of the sect of all times, who were in the most dazzling area of the white light, were all stunned. Whoosh! After a while, the light that was as bright as day suddenly disappeared, and the whole world returned to normal. Jun Changshao, who was in the center of the fortune-stealing formation, had disappeared. This meant that the illegal immigration was a success. However, a very serious problem appeared. Go Sheng had left, but the Ironbone Mountain and the disciples were still there. Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuiji, and the others were dumbstruck. After a while, they looked at each other in dismay. Their faces were filled with confusion. Damn it! Rose of Flowers frowned and said, "He said that he would bring me with him. Why did he leave alone?" Falling Star Calendar, September 9th, 12028 Night. The natural phenomenon pierced through the clouds. The patriarch of the sect of all times, the alliance master of the martial alliance, Jun Changshao, broke through the void and ascended to the upper realm under everyone's witness. He became the new legend of the continent. Chapter 1326. The phenomenon disappeared. The higher-ups and disciples of the sect of all times were dumbfounded. They were supposed to ascend to the upper realm together. Why did they only see the patriarch being guided by the holy light, and then breaking through the clouds? Everyone was left behind. As experienced people, although the 9 great martial emperors were not present, they could tell from the commotion that this was not a void shattering. Someone had used the fortune of heaven and earth array to sneak in. Who? It should be Jun Changshao. That's right. Go Sheng finally succeeded in sneaking in as he wished. However, he wanted to bring the entire sect to sneak in, but in the end, he was the only one who went up. This was not going according to the plot. Second senior brother, Su Xiaoma, looked like he was about to break down. The patriarch has ascended by himself. What should we do? Li Qingyang said helplessly. I don't know what to do either. Damn it. Yi Xingchen was so angry that his hands were trembling. He had long been prepared to ascend to the upper realm, but in the end, this was the result. It was really hard to accept. Sigh. Elder Wei and the others shook their heads and sighed. They were not upset that they did not ascend to the upper realm, but that the patriarch had gone up alone. Wouldn't the sect have lost its backbone? Elder Zhen, Jiangye said, can the array be activated again? After Jun Changshao was teleported, Zhen Dejuan began to study it. In the end, he found that the array core and the front line had completely dimmed, so he said helplessly, "This is a one-time array. It will lose its effect once it's activated." Everyone, although the patriarch used to be a hands-off boss, he could still come back. Now that he had broken through the void shattering, wouldn't it mean that he would be separated forever? A gloomy cloud gradually gathered in the sky. The higher-ups and disciples looked listless. A sect without the patriarch was incomplete. A sect of all times without Jun Changshao was soulless. Just as everyone was in low spirits, Rose of Flowers adjusted her mood in time and said, "All the internal affairs of the sect will still be handled by Yuan Gongzi. Everyone go about your duties as usual." The patriarch was not there. The patriarch's wife is still here. Moreover, an empress who could control a plane might be able to control a sect. Yes, everyone received the order. It was a fact that the patriarch had ascended, and it could not be reversed. The only thing they could do was adjust their mentality and welcome the days without the patriarch in the future. Husband, Rose of Flowers looked up at the sky and thought, "I will help you manage the sect of all times until I have the strength to break through the void. Then, I will go to the upper realm to reunite with you." Senior sister Lu, Yao Minjing, teared up and said, "Will the patriarch come back?" The patriarch left peacefully. "He will definitely return," Lu Wancher said with a firm gaze. "Move it, move it, move it." The next day, a beautiful melody sounded in the martial arts practice field as usual, and all the disciples began to do their morning exercises. Although Jun Changshao had left, they would not relax, so they still had to work hard to cultivate and continue to improve their strength. Snowflakes fluttering, the north wind whistling. Heaven and earth are vast. A pair of plum blossoms stand proudly in the snow, only for the fragrance of my lover. The sad song resounded in the sky above the sect of all times. and it seemed to be able to penetrate the endless void and reverberate in the vast snowy land. Why is this? Why is this? In the vast snowy land, a lonely person stood. He knelt on the ground, hugging his head and shouting, "That's right. This was the upper realm. A new world that was no different from the falling star continent, except for the unusually rich heaven and earth attribute. That's right." This person was Jun Changxiao. At this moment, he was completely disheartened. The matter started from when he appeared out of thin air. When Go Sheng felt the stronger heaven and earth attribute, he realized that he had successfully sneaked in. So he spread his arms and said with a happy expression, "New world, new air, new atmosphere. Babies, tell me loudly, do you feel it?" Silence. Cold. There was nothing else. Could it be that they were shocked by the heaven and earth attribute of the upper realm? Sigh. What a bunch of inexperienced disciples. Jun Changxiao opened his eyes, and in the next second, his expression became sluggish. Because what he saw was not the sect, but a snowy land. Fuck. He had clearly set up a large-scale creation formation on Mount Ironbone. Why didn't he bring it up? Could it be that this formation could only allow living beings to sneak in, and could not bring the entire mountain? It did not matter. It did not matter. If he did not bring Mount Ironbone, he could just find another mountain. Jun Changxiao's mentality was still quite good. However, the system's voice rang in his ears. "I'm sorry to inform the host that not only was Mount Ironbone not brought up, your wife, the higher-ups of the sect, disciples, and even chickens, ducks, geese, and fish were all not brought up." Gah! Jun Changxiao's facial muscles suddenly froze. After a while, he turned around stiffly. Only then did he realize that he was surrounded by a vast snowy land, and there was no one else except him. Therefore he knelt on the ground, hugged his head and shouted, "Why is this? Why is this?" "Because," the system explained, "the creation formation can only transport one person." The host's previous thinking was too naive. Puffed. Jun Changxiao spat out a mouthful of blood. "I studied seriously and painstakingly for 9 years, and even made drastic changes to the formation, and even lost all my hair. But in the end, only I was transported up. What was this? This was a blatant scam. Since you knew, why didn't you say so earlier?" Jun Changxiao clutched his chest, his heart bleeding. "I'm sorry," the system said. "I guessed it based on Empress Ling Yao's ascension to the upper realm, as well as the host's ascension this time." Ah! Jun Changxiao hugged his head and screamed. 9 years of hard work just to bring the sect to the upper realm. But in the end, he was the only one who came up. This was definitely not the plot he wanted. This was definitely, stop howling. The system said, "There are still 3 months before the main mission. The host had better think of a way quickly. Otherwise, when the time comes, you and I will both die." Puffed. Jun Changxiao spat out another mouthful of blood. If the sect did not ascend with him, then so be it. At most, he could develop his strength first, and when he had the strength in the future, he could bring them up one by one. But the main mission was still there, and there were only 3 months left. If I knew this would be the result. Jun Changxiao lay down and buried his face in the snow. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. I shouldn't have smuggled myself up. Why? The reason was simple. In the lower realm, he only had to think of a way to smuggle himself in, but in the upper realm, he had to think of a way to go down. Sigh. The system said, "Poor host." After a pause, it suddenly burst into laughter. As a professional assistant, it had undergone strict training, and no matter how funny it was, it would not laugh unless it could not help it. 9 years. He had finally developed the formation with his own efforts, especially when he was about to ascend, and the special effects and funds were exhausted. In the end, coming up alone was simply, swoosh. Jun Changxiao stood up from the snow, his eyes shining with an unyielding luster. He said, "I will not be defeated by setbacks, I will pull myself together." His attitude and eyes represented his current attitude, but his body was honestly drooping, as if he had lost his soul. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, streams of light streaked across the void, and a strong airflow came first, instantly sweeping away the snow on the ground. Jun Chengxiao's eyes widen, because when the aura gradually calmed down, martial artists on flying swords stood in the air 100 feet away. They were wearing the same uniform and looked very stylish. "How dare you, thief!" The leader of the group, a young man, shouted coldly. "How dare you trespass into the territory of the Sword Mystic Sect?" "Thief!" Jun Chengxiao straightened his body and slowly raised his head. The corners of his mouth raised into a disdainful, apologetic smile. He said, "Sorry, I'm lost. I'll leave now." "Fuck." The system roared. "Didn't you say that in the upper realm, life and death were insignificant? And if you were not satisfied, then fight." That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.